And we're live streaming. This is the Ham Radio Workbench podcast. Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us on this live stream. We're going to be doing something we haven't done very much, which is a video feed of doing the show itself. So tonight we've got Rod VA3ON, Mike VA3MW, and Vince VE6LK, and myself. And we're going to go ahead and roll into the show in just a minute. When we start up here and do the live stream, as we talk about topics, you're welcome to ask questions and also to make suggestions for items on our shopping show. So we're really happy that you could join us. And we're going to go ahead and roll right into the show in a sec here. So let's see. You guys all set?
Yeah.
Roger.
Punch
Dodger.
it, Chewy.
Okay, let's do an audio check. Vince, give me a quick count.
This is an audio check. If this was a real test, you would have been informed where to go for further cold drinks.
Sufficient. Rod?
Where am I? When am I? What year is it? It's all me.
Okay. Mike?
CQ contest. This is 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Of course, it's a CW contest this weekend.
You're cheating, man. All right. Close enough. All right, very good. We'll go ahead and roll in right now. So this is the point where normally after we've sort of organized things and got ready to record the show, we get all the logistics out of the way. So we did that kind of pre-show here, so you don't have to watch quite all of that. The way we're going to do this is we're going to roll into the show. We're going to do our first segment. We then take a break as we normally do. So during the break, we'll just be sitting here and chatting for a couple of minutes, and then we'll start up and record the next segment and the following segment. So you'll see the whole thing streamed live. And then when you go listen to the audio podcast, it will be tightened up. So it'll be, this is just, as it happens, but what actually goes into the audio show will be the slightly edited form. So we'll get rid of the dead space in the middle. All right. With that, gents, we're going to go ahead and get started here. And so we're going to do that in 5, 4. Welcome to the Ham Radio Workbench podcast, your biweekly deep dive on technical topics of interest to the amateur radio operator. Today is the annual shopping show, so it's time to warm up your credit cards and make that list, whether you've been naughty or nice. It's time to make a list and give it to your significant other or your friends or just for yourself. And we really hope that you're going to learn something on the show today. We are actually streaming this on YouTube. I think this is the first time we've really done a show recorded for audio purposes and also done a live stream. So welcome everybody on whatever channel, and whether you're listening to this in real time or recorded later for normal distribution through audio. But first, if this is the first time you're listening to the show, welcome. You can find out more about the show at our website, hamradioworkbench.com. You can follow us on Twitter using the handle hamworkbench. You can also talk to over 2,000 of our fellow listeners on our Facebook page. Search for Ham Radio Workbench. We also can meet up live and direct and talk on the Brandmeister DMR Talk Group 31075, and now the All-Star Node 55915, and eventually they'll be connected together. You can always leave us feedback on our contact page. We read all the feedback. So Jeremy was going to join us tonight for the show. He's been excited about being on this particular episode, but being the week of Thanksgiving, he had a lot of family obligations and some stuff came up at the last minute, so he had to go tend to family matters. So unfortunately, he will not be with us, but we'll have him back on another show, hopefully in the near future. Although, he'll be coming on as a guest, I suppose, but we'll figure out how to manage through that. So first off, good evening, Rod, VA3ON.
Good evening. And I did hear that actually Jeremy might have been out doing some Black Friday shopping, and it wasn't that he couldn't be back for the evening. It was that he, maxed out the credit cards on that, so he wasn't able to join us.
Well, if he maxed them out, he would have plenty of time to join us.
That's true.
Hey, Mike, VA3MW.
Good evening. How are you, George?
Oh, I'm doing great, thank you. And Vince, VE6LK.
Hello, George, Rod, and Mike. I hope you're doing half as well as I am.
I'm sure everybody's doing at least half as well as you are. So before we get into the shopping show content, I wanted to mention something. We've spent a lot of time and effort in the last several months building a editorial calendar, as they say, of shows coming up. We've got several shows in the planning. 3 of them I wanted to mention that are in the next couple of months. that are well worth it. So you might want to take note. We're going to have a show with Thomas Witherspoon, K4SWL. And you may know Thomas because he is the publisher of the QRPer website. Hang on one second. Guess what?
That's going to be an
Oh
edit.
no, I knew it. Okay,
Oh,
dear
you know,
Wait, well, hold
viewers,
yeah.
let me
I didn't
explain
say
this.
what
This is
just
closed caption for things that go wrong department. Now, the good news is this is nearly a record. In the first 6 minutes, we managed to catch a fatal mistake. So
Now-
right now, I'm pressing the record button. George is pressing the record button.
I can hit the record button.
hang on a
Don't
second.
now. What was the question you had, Rod?
Oh,
About
man.
5. Do you want me to redo a backup record on this? And George said,
Do you need a
no.
backup?
Nah, we don't need that.
Backup.
We got it covered.
Uh,
So
Guess
you
what?
want to take it? We'll just take it from the top.
Shop.
Well, you know what they say: 2 is 1 and 1 is none, right?
Yeah, that's a fact. All right. So what we're all laughing about here is we were so I was so concerned about getting the video thing up and running. I forgot to hit the record button for the audio.
And
Like,
that's my
never
job for
happened.
not reminding you. Because I had
Good
nothing to
news
do.
is it's not at 1 hour 20 minutes.
Oh
Hang on, I'm
my,
gonna hit
yeah, no
record on
kidding.
this.
That's really good.
Oh, okay. So if you're tuning in late, you get to hear it from the top. All right. Oh man, I can't imagine what the comments are like now. Like, what a bunch of.
Here we go.
Beep,
In
beep.
5,
All right.
4.
Welcome to the Ham Radio Workbench Podcast, your bi-weekly deep dive on technical topics of interest to the radio amateur. Today is our annual shopping show, so it's time to warm up the credit cards and make your list, whether you've been naughty or nice. It's time to think about the goodies you'd like to see under the Christmas tree or whatever holiday you celebrate this time of year. And this particular show is kind of little different because we are streaming live to YouTube. In fact, this is the second time we did the intro because I managed to not hit the record button for the audio part of the podcast. So we're going to record the show like we normally record a show, except we're also streaming video. So if you happen to be watching it live on YouTube, you can see all of the the what works really well and some of the goofs as they go. So anyway, welcome, and we'll be taking questions and suggestions in the chat as well, which is something we can't normally do. So tonight we have with us Rod VA3ON. Hi, Rod.
Hello, George. I'm glad we record a backup to this. It's a great
glad
idea.
We did. I'm glad I noticed. So good to see you. Hi, Mark. VA. Mark is not here. Mike VA3MW.
Do you want me to leave a space on that
Yeah,
one?
leave a space for that. Go ahead.
Hey, George, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, thanks. And Vince,
You're
VE6
recovering
Okay.
well.
Yeah, I'm trying to. VE6LK.
Good evening, George.
Hi, Vince. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Well, we were supposed to have Jeremy with us on this show because, Jeremy decided to hang up his spurs and not do the podcast anymore, to do other stuff. But I said, hey, we got the shopping show coming up. He said, I'm in. So all this time he was planning to join us, but unfortunately, because of a bunch of family commitments, he couldn't make it. So he won't be on this show, but hopefully in the coming months, he will be joining us. So let's see. A couple things coming up on the calendar. I did want to mention we have a couple of really interesting shows in the pipeline. We've been working on our editorial calendar for the last couple of months, trying to put together a set of shows for the first quarter of 2022. And three of the ones that are right around the corner I want to mention. One is with Thomas Witherspoon, K4SWL. And that show is around gear bags, believe it or not, equipment bags, stuff to haul your gear to the field with. And just between Rod and I, we can spend 3 hours on that topic alone.
Yeah, that'll be our special 6-hour episode. It'll come in 3 parts. Yes.
Yes. And if you ever thought that what's to talk about, there's plenty to talk about. I think I've never met a nylon gear bag I didn't like or buy. For that matter.
It's just a nylon bag. How special can it be?
Oh, Vince.
Oh, Vince. Vince.
Tisk.
All right.
Now, Thomas is the he has a couple of blogs, really fabulous blogs. So QRPer is a great blog where he talks about gear reviews, his personal experience with various different portable radio gear, and SWLing Post, so like shortwave listening post, so about shortwave listening, and they're both excellent. And he's also been doing quite a bit of YouTube videos, and he does these unscripted videos where he goes to the field, sets up his gear, and makes a bunch of contacts. And so you watch the setup, the contacts, the teardown, and it's very pleasant to watch. For me, I really watch the beginning and end, because like one contact and 20 contacts all look the same, but it's neat to see what gear he takes. And he takes quite a variety of stuff. So Thomas will be on here. Kyle AA0Z will be on to talk about a really interesting project he built, which is a wireless network for field day. So he built a box that has the routers and a bunch of other equipment to interconnect all the computers for field day. So we got into quite a conversation about how do you build such a thing and what kind of features should it have. So that'll be an interesting one. And also another one I'm quite looking forward to is Dr. Doug Millar's coming back on. And that show, we're going to talk about RF connectors and coax. So surely if we can talk about nylon bags for 3 hours, we can figure out enough to talk about connectors and coax. So
well, connectors and coax are very important after all.
So have you set apart 45 minutes to discuss how to solder a PL259?
Yeah, actually that would make for a good video.
It'll be the great debate.
Yeah. Do you solder? Oh, well, there's that.
Which arbitrary side do you want to take? Yeah, literally.
Yes. So that'll be fun. I listen to a lot of you guys talk about this stuff, especially like on YouTube and stuff like that. And there's a lot of basic, information everybody kind of knows, but there's also a lot of misunderstanding, I think, about, how critical certain connectors are, and, when should you use what kind of connector or another. Does it really matter? And same thing with cable. So that should be interesting. So we have a lot of cool shows coming up, and hope you'll tune in and listen to those shows over the next coming months. So that's the basic setup for today's shopping show. What we're going to go through after we do our Workbench segment, we're going to go through ideas for radios, for HF radios, for VHF, UHF radios. We'll talk a bit about both like mobile and HT type radios. And then we're going to spend quite a bit of time on accessories. And by accessories, they could be ham radio accessories, or they could be non-radio things that are still really helpful for us, especially for things like portable field operating or just operating around the shack. So I'm sure we'll get into at least an hour on the right Phillips screwdriver to select and what country you're going to import it from. Rod.
Yeah, this may or may not be a German shopping show.
Hard to imagine it won't be, actually. So, alrighty. So that's basically what we're gonna do on the rundown here. So at this point, what I'd like to do is kick it over to Rod. And Rod, tell us what's on your workbench.
Well, a lot of these things are fairly spontaneous this week because it's been a busy week. And then I suddenly turned around and decided, what are we going to do on the weekend? And I finally have a relatively non-hockey weekend. But one of the interesting things was I have come into recent possession of a couple of low cost to me, no cost to me, Motorola HTs, CP150s, I think, ancient little handheld. And I'm looking at repurposing those for other things. I'm even thinking about getting a small commercial license up here for hockey stuff. So I'm just playing around. I'm tearing these things apart. It's kind of fun to be able to get a device that's well made, but you don't care about, so that you can take apart, oh, how does this work? What can I tear apart? What can I change and modify? And it's not like I put a dime into these things. So life is good.
So what's the model of the radio you got?
This is the Radius. Now this is going to show how rough these things look. But I'm holding it up to the camera for the folks on the broadcast. It's the Radius CP150, fine Motorola product.
They look like they have previous experience.
Oh, they owe knowing anything, but they're actually
they're the 2N222 of Motorola handheld radios.
exactly, almost as much
cockroach.
as the ancient ones, the big hit somebody over the head with them ones. Anyways, I was delighted to get these because, like I said, they're built like tanks. They look like great fun. They appear to operate. I realized that I no longer have a frequency counter in my kit. So I was trying to figure out, what are these programmed for? And I know that there's somewhere in the 440 band.
I'll bring it over for you.
Oh, you're a good
Do you not
man.
have a handheld like a VX7 that has that feature built in?
Do you not have an SDR dongle?
Yeah, this is how it starts, people. This is how it starts.
Rod, do you not
every
have a
time.
spectrum analyzer?
You don't, what's wrong with you people? Anyways,
Communication service monitor.
so once again, something that I got for free is going to end up costing me big money.
Oh, dear.
By the time I buy new batteries and all this other good stuff. So who knows what I'm even going to do with this thing, but it's great fun. And it got me thinking at the same time of, do I think about getting the team a set of the GMRS radios for kind of handouts, because on the benches you've got the coaches and you've got the trainers, and sometimes there's an incident on the ice and you need to involve the parents and all this other good stuff, and we do all these crazy hand signals. So I'm trying to eliminate some of that. It's going to be an application of stuff I know to an area that I can actually find it valuable beyond ham radio, which is great. The other thing that's warming up on my bench is actually just cleaning off my bench. How many people have been in that boat? Because
Cleaning off the bench? What is this concept?
what is it what you speak of? Well, here's what started it all. George sent me a couple of weeks ago a gigantic box of circuit boards and components. Thank you very much, George. I appreciate it. But this is one of those gifts that could be a curse.
They keep giving?
Oh, it keeps giving and giving. Like,
is that like the same box I got?
In the way that a kid brother pokes you in the ribs every 3 seconds, I'm looking over at this box going, I need to do something with this. It's going to be fun when I get into it, but I need to do something. And it's kind of intimidating because there's a bunch of connectors on this thing. Like,
I think it's going to be the only project I do that's going to use an entire roll of solder. Just on the back plane.
If you guys throw in together, you can get a wave solder machine.
Wave soldering machine.
I don't kid yourself. There is a oven that I inherited, a stainless steel oven that will go up into the right temperature range. And I'm looking at replacing that with a controller. If I ever do that, it's going to be a project for this show.
Actually, making a reflow oven is not that bad. It's just those big through hole things take too much solder.
Yeah,
it's not that bad. Once you do your first couple hundred connections, the other 1,000 is.
Don't forget the fan.
Downhill.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm thinking about doing is, and the reason I'm cleaning off the bench, is I was looking at, well, what would happen if I put a video camera over this and just did one of these ridiculous time delay things, where it all happens at incredibly high speeds, but you see how incredibly slow I am at this. So the super card cage project, or whatever we're calling this thing, is station controller. Yes. It still intimidates me as the super card cage, but the station controller is on my bench. It's something that is causing me to replenish some soldering supplies. Yes, a whole pound of it that just came in the mail, and also setting up the cameras for largely comical effect. So that's what's on my bench right now. Vince, what's on your workbench?
I say as I turn around and look at my workbench, it's got absolutely nothing on it.
It's pretty clean.
It's not bad, right?
What's wrong with you? Yeah.
I haven't been feeling right lately.
Did you have relatives over for Thanksgiving? Oh, you don't do Thanksgiving, do
you? Well, Canadian Thanksgiving was several weeks ago. No,
you don't do real Thanksgiving.
Not going there. Maple syrup, Tim Hortons, not going there.
Sorry.
We
We
take
did burn down your
advantage of the
White-
lack of
hockey
phone
sticks.
calls.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, we
So-
did burn down your White House once.
Oh, don't tell them that. They don't like that pointed out. That's not good.
Keep going, Vince.
Keep going.
Okay,
Got nothing.
controlled.
So
Is that
here's
a
what-
beep?
no, it's not quite a beep. I think we can leave it there. So, ladies and gentlemen, fanfare horns play. Da 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 da. Oscar Mike Golf. My spare parts arrived.
For what?
So the story behind the display for my MCHF is I ordered it in June. It showed up on November 3rd after I sent some terse emails back and forth with the seller who was supposed to provide me tracking and never did. And he gave me my money back and I bought another one from him because this was part of the deal. No, with the full risk knowing that worst case, I'd be out for none of them because he promised me my money back on the second one. And the first one arrived on November 3rd, and the second one arrived on November the 9th. The first one was ordered June the 15th. The second one was ordered August the 1st. What a heck of a difference in shipping time. So anyway, parts are here. The next thing that is going on my bench is the MCHF that needs repair. And I don't know what's wrong with it. So that'll be a great challenge. But what I have been working on extensively, but George has a question.
I do. So you're fixing your. I was confused by something you just said, that you're fixing your Mac HF, but you're not sure what's wrong with it. But you have
That is
parts to
correct
fix it?
because it's not mine. See, I bought it in condition that there was something wrong with it. So silly Vince, early in the pandemic, bought this radio for an inexpensive price with the thought that because it's pandemic, he needed a challenge on a repair. So
Yeah.
what the heck? I like
So
repairing
how did
things.
you know what parts to get then?
Well, I've been working my way through this radio slowly.
Oh, I see.
And the display was the latest thing to fail on it. And it's hard to use without the display. It's hard to run diagnostics on it. It's hard to power it up. It's just a pain in the patoot. Frankly, it's a pain in the patoot to work on. It's nowhere near as much fun to work on as like an 857 or a VX7. Rod?
So note to self, when I want to take up a big challenge because I know there's a shutdown and a pandemic, order my parts early.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you
Got it.
should order your
I'll
parts
plan my
early.
next pandemic.
Yeah, there you go. So
What's an MCHF?
An MCHF is a kit-built HF transceiver, QRP rig. Apparently quite a fun little build. They come in several different flavors and colors, but it's a very nice little QRP rig. Mark has one. He really enjoys it. So anyway, I'm looking forward to that because that's a nice, big, tasty project that will fill my empty workbench for a while. But I've spent a couple of weeks. I spent a couple of weeks working on Packet, and I've talked about going off to our repeater sites and working on some of our WinLink Packet infrastructure. And so I'm the newbie tech in the club. There are many more experienced than me. And part of the kit that I built up in my WinLink Packet to go, and you can read the story on my website, is the MDS 4310 data radio. I found a Coastal Chipworks TNCX that was built from a kit by somebody, and it came out of an estate sale. It needed some cleanup when I got it, and I integrated it all together, and it kind of worked, but kind of didn't, and we really didn't understand why. So we pulled some of the kit back from the field, and we got into this really laborious process of ensuring that deviation was set right, ensuring that SINAD was set right on the radios, because all these radios are the same. The TNCs are different. So do we drive the right level audio coming into it? So turn on the service monitor, gen the audio, determine the SINAD threshold, mark it down on the paper. What's the TNC putting out? Do we get the right deviation out of the radio? And then, because it's packet, 1200 baud packet in this case, are the high and the low tones. The 2200 and the 1200 hertz tones equal on deviation. And so now I'm going to deep dive into deviation and deep dive into packet for just a few minutes. The thing that packet radio does not like, and newer TNCs have a feature called twist to them. And what twist does is it adjusts and it compensates for the amplitude of the high tone and the amplitude of the low tone. In a perfect world, they're even. It doesn't mind if the high tone is too hot, upwards to 12 or 15 dB. Most other TNCs can decode that. My Coastal Chipworks TNCX was exactly the reverse. The low tone was about 15 dB higher. The real challenge with the Chipworks TNCX is, and now it's marketed by MFJ as the MFJ 1270, is there's no way to throw it into a diagnostic mode. So with an Argent Micro or a Cantronics, you can say to it, transmit a low tone, transmit a high tone, transmit both, and you can measure it on your service monitor, your deviation monitor. With my TNCX, I had to hardware hack it. I had to determine that it was an MX614 modem chip. I had to determine that if I held pin 11 and pin 3 on the chip high to 5 volts, that I could generate either the high or the low tone or both. Boy, oh boy, this was really a very deep dive that about a year ago I wouldn't have felt comfortable digging into. At the end of the day, where did I end up with this? I can't fix the TNCX unless I build some sort of roll off filter and put the low tone at the edge of the skirt. But there was a compensation mode in the 4310 radio for high pass. And when I turn it all the way to one end, I can get the two tones to equalize. I do that at the expense of deviation. The 4310 radio is very capable of deviating 25 kilohertz of signal. We don't want that, of course. We want 3, maybe 3.5. And so my radio is now outputting 2.2 kilohertz of deviation, but the tones are even. And 100% of the tries that I make into the packet network, I make contact with. So 8 hours of troubleshooting on the bench later, and it reminded me of the early days of my Hayes Smartass 2400 baud modem connecting on BBSs on the Apple II Plus and the noises that the modem used to make. That's what it sounded like to me, ladies and gentlemen. So that was my last 2 weeks on the bench, was just one thing.
So is that sorry, I'm not laughing at you, Vince. I'm laughing at a comment in the chat.
Yeah, of course.
So is that because the radio audio is not flat, and the device expects flat audio, and so you have pre-emphasized audio off the discriminator, or is it flat off the speaker?
So I'm talking about the input audio to the radio, the transmit audio specifically.
Okay.
And it is emphasized audio, but my TNC isn't putting it out flat. My TNC is actually, the low tone is hotter.
Oh,
it's
the low tone
expecting
is
flat.
hotter.
The low tone is hotter.
Oh,
and that's what a packet network doesn't want to hear.
Yeah.
It can survive a high tone being hotter, but not the low tone. So can you say pain in the beep?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so it sounds like that's all working.
It is all working. An oscilloscope, a service monitor, a power meter, and a few other things. We're all out on the bench all at the same time. I now own more grabber clip leads than I ever thought I would need, just so that I could, wrap the pins or wrap the clips around the pins on the IC. Yoy. Thank goodness for discrete components. I couldn't have done this on surface mount, not as easily anyway.
So I got another question for you. So I would assume the TNCX would be running the normal built-in TNC. I assume it has TNC software, firmware built into it, like a
KISS
conventional
mode, buddy.
TNC.
It's KISS mode. It's
okay,
a PIC microcontroller.
But if you're using it for WinLink, so I guess you can run WinLink. So I'm a newbie to WinLink, so pardon my dumb question. But when you're running WinLink on VHF, you can run WinLink on packet modems as the transport layer, but WinLink's protocol is running on the radio modem on top of it. Does that make sense?
So WinLink uses this TNC as a KISS modem, as a KISS mode device, plain and simple.
Okay, so is that serial data in and then modem tone out?
Oh, now you're asking such really difficult questions, George, that I can't answer.
I think we need a deeper dive on this at some point. I'd love to
We-
understand what you're doing.
We could get a deeper dive, but at the end of the day, I spent a week and a half, about 10 hours, trying to shape the audio signal coming off my really inexpensive TNC so that it was flat going into the radio.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
So-
use WinLink very much in your club or in that area?
Yeah, we have 3 or 4 UHF digipeaters that go to gateways, and so we blanket this area. This area got really wet in 2013, the floods of southern Alberta, and it would be great to. It's great to have that infrastructure. So if I'm not connecting on packet for WinLink, I'm connecting on HF, and then lastly Telnet from here at home. I can do that in the field, or I can do that from home. Either way, the kit is part of my Go kit. It's organized in a Pelican case. It's modular to that system. I could talk at length about my Go kit, but I won't. Anyway, it's all part of it. So
Actually, that would be an interesting thing to talk about. You can never talk enough about Go kits, so I think we could put that on the list at some point.
yeah, indeed. So we have somebody that wants to join in. So I think it's time that we welcome N6MTS. Mark might be locally muted. I saw his lips moving. So while Mark sorts that out, hey Mike, what's on your bench?
That's funny. Hey, Mark, welcome. Well, thanks for sharing. And that's you brought back so many memories. And there's, a bunch of us in the chat have been going on about TNCs, which were pre-internet for most of us, right? We were moving. If we got an email the same week it was sent, we were real happy you're there, Mark. So welcome. So a couple of things I've been working on. Which, if you dropped into our practice show on Wednesday, on a 10 gig dish for 10 gig. Rain scatter, because somebody convinced me to do it. So my 705 got relegated to be the IF for that, and so on and so forth. And I then had to do some digging, and probably annoyed a few people on the 705 reflector trying to find out what the keying current is on a 705. And it's in there, and I missed it the 7 times I looked, but it's only 20 milliamps, George. You probably already knew that, but it's pretty light. So I knew I had an envelope from George, among many, Christmas gifty things that just randomly show up.
Yes, they keep on giving.
And so the amplifier keying interface that he built for the 705 was going to go into use. So thank you for that. And at some point in time, he'll tell me, got it all working, except for which screw goes where to put it together. But it's usable. So thanks for that. And in the process of trying to find that and the 8-button magic keyboard that goes for the 705, which is another piece of gorgeous work, which is even more complicated in what screw goes where and spacing. Maybe I'll ask
Okay,
Mark.
I should have done a diagram. Fair enough.
Or at least a picture of yours. And I tidied up about 80% of my shack. And and I touched the bag that these were in no less than 4 times. But that's just the way my brain works, right? It's like I'm already looking here, but my brain's 3 boxes ahead that I have to go to next, and sort of the way I'm wired. Nothing can change that.
And Mike, there's no way it could have been in that bag, right? It's got to be in that other bag that you're about to get to. So naturally, you passed it over.
I knew it was in this room. It had to be in this room.
Is that a nylon bag? I'm afraid to ask.
It was I think it was a used lunch bag from his ham sandwich.
So describe what those two things do, so people could follow along.
So the one of them is a amplifier keying interface or some sort of external. If you want to hook up an amplifier, in my case, it's a transverter. 20 milliamps is a little light on the current to key to put in transmit the other device. Probably just okay. I would have liked 200 milliamps. Yeah, and so unfortunately you have to put up, an ARB 704, which is the MFJ version, or some sort of buffer in between, just to make sure that you don't short it out or kill it, and then it has to go home to be fixed. The other device plugs in the key jack, and then the key plugs into this, and I get 8 CW memory keys, I guess. And does it work for voice keying as well, memories?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Cool. So I'm looking forward to that, especially for some of the 10 gig stuff when I maybe just want to, set up a beacon or just keep punching the button type of thing. So that'll be great. He's done an amazing job on those. So that was yesterday's project because we were closed. So I got to actually play ham radio for 2 days straight, which generally by the end of the day, I don't feel like playing ham radio much, having to work in it all day. So pretty much about 80% finished the 10 gig dish. So I've got the transverter mounted, and I've got the 10 megahertz reference oscillator, the GPSDO, which is one of those $100 ones off eBay, and then I'll mount the 705 on the back, and we'll maybe I can do. I think Rod. I think we could probably pull off doing snow squall scatter.
There's a great idea. That's a whole
especially
new event.
this part of the world, especially the last 2 days. So it's here in Toronto, or where Rod is. It's a little chilly. You could cut your grass, but you don't have to go far from us. And there's 30 to 40 centimeters of snow because we have these northwest winds rather, bringing all this moisture over. And when you hear about the squalls that just bury buffalo, we haven't had that in a while, right? Buffalo hasn't been buried in a while. It's the same thing.
And you're not talking about the Sabres, to be clear, of the Bills.
No, that's when there's a faint glow on the horizon whenever there's a victory or a defeat.
So-
Apologies to Sabres fans.
So once the 10 gig rig is set up, what are you going to do with it?
Well, we have a fairly large microwave crowd in the GTA and Toronto area here, and so we'll go out and we'll do roving and work grids and try to get VUCC at 10 gig or more. But it's communications or QSO's possible distances between 200 and 700 kilometers is doable, and I've got 3 watts out of the transverter, and I've got about 30 dB gain on the dish. So do the math, but that's 1,000-time increase.
3 kilowatts, baby.
Right where the hot dog can cook.
You can warm your lunch.
Point.
So now there's 10 gig microwave contests twice a year in September and October, and they're super popular. Is there any 10 gig contest activity in that area?
Yeah, same thing. Same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Because I would think there probably would be there somewhere.
In fact, I think Peter V3LE and Geddes in Illinois just started playing last week, just on some of the JT65 modes in a closed band, and actually were able to pull off a couple of contacts. Exchange call sign, some other piece of information. Pretty impressive, and that's 500K.
Yeah. When they do the
probably off
contest
airplane
thing,
scatter.
what was the distance?
500K, 400 kilometers.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, here in California, because we have these mountain things, they do get pretty long distances, and normally they'll try to make contact on sideband, but if the path is just not good enough, then they'll go to CW. But I haven't seen them use any of the JT stuff on terrestrial microwave for the 10 gig contest. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say it depends how stable the system is.
Yeah, for sure. But boy, there's a bunch of activity when those contests roll around.
Well,
that
got
sounds
those
like fun.
mountain. You got those mountain things. We don't got those mountain things.
Yeah, it helps to have the mountain things.
does.
Although interestingly enough, someone was telling me once that I said, well, that's great because you can go on top of your 3,000-foot mountain, and the other guy could be on his 4,000-foot mountain, and you get a long distance. And they said, well, that's difficult to do because of ducting. And he said it's actually easier to go from the mountaintop to the ground to cut through the inversion layer than it is to go
Right.
Oh, interesting.
with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
the
I think we've had
escarpment
that-
doesn't count. The Niagara
What's that, Vince?
Escarpment.
75
In Niagara
feet,
Escarpment.
it's all
So
good.
I was born and raised in Hamilton, and in Hamilton we called it the mountain, and so I went
Of
up
course you
the
did.
mountain to college. Now, the Niagara Escarpment, you can read up on that. It's a 660-foot ledge formed by the Ice Age, but we called it. Yeah, I live up on the mountain. That's what we do.
Mhm.
And it's good for flood insurance too.
That's good for flood
So
insurance.
we also have the CN Tower, which apparently some guys will deflect some signals off, and then with the airport. But George, I think I've sent you screenshots when I've been watching the UHF beacon, and then I will see some Doppler effect on the waterfall because I'm using the Flex, which resolutions is about down to about 4 hertz per pixel, and you can see the Doppler shift from stuff coming in and because I'm a pilot, I'll bring up a tool we called what's it called, ForeFlight, and I can see the real-time aircraft on it and go and look, okay, the beacon's here, I'm here, and that guy just that's probably came off him. It sort of makes sense, or something halfway in between, and who knows. At least it's a good story. So that's about it. I'm playing. Some of you guys have probably seen me been playing with Mark hasn't seen me been playing with video switching yet, but he'll want to do it. But anyway, so that's all I got. And I don't know. I'm throwing it. Mark's typed in a lot of stuff. So Mark, welcome to the show. I hope you had a good day. What's on your workbench?
Yes. First off, apologies for being late. I was up in the Bay Area, up near George's neck of the woods, last couple of days, and we literally got home at about 6 o'clock, right about the start time of this recording, and I needed dinner. So I made some food, heated up some leftovers, and cooked some ramen noodles and whatnot. But anyway, I made dinner, and now I am ready to do this show. Although my microphone is working according to Linux, but for some reason StreamYard wasn't seeing it. I was selecting the right microphone, but it wasn't getting any anyway. So I just switched over to my other mic. So this is my good quality mic, not the one that's mounted to the side of my headphones. All right, so what's on my workbench? Well, unfortunately for our listeners who like details, my secret squirrel project has been taking most of my time. I am not yet ready to talk about what it is, but I will say that the hardware, the prototype hardware is in really good shape. So I've got a hardware platform that I can use to develop the software. It is mostly electrically the hardware that I'm going to probably go to production with. There are a couple of things I'm thinking of changing between now and going to production. But it's good enough that I'll be able to develop all the software, and the software will just work on the new version.
And for the GoFundMe on the Secret Squirrel, will the strawberry daiquiri be supported?
The strawberry, wait, what?
The strawberry daiquiri mode that you promised.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure.
This is ham radio, not a blender, just so we're clear.
Oh, you were saying something about mixing before, but okay, go on.
That mixer. No, that's not a secret squirrel, but that will be a product eventually. So, anyway, so hardware is coming along great. I've got some software to write. Right now, I'm doing all of the boring infrastructural type software, all the modules that don't really wow anybody, but they are what make it easy to do the stuff that does look impressive. So it's all of the widgets and the UI control and stuff like that. So I'm doing all of the boring coding right now, and then I have to go actually implement the different use cases and modes and whatnot. So again, I am hoping that sometime in or late December, I will have something that I can demo to some beta testers and have shipped off to some people and say, hey, does this thing even work? And get some opinions and whatnot, and then start working on the final hardware design and be ready by February sometime to make the decision whether I'm going to invest my own personal money into making some number of these things and trying to sell them. So that's kind of the timeline that I'm looking at right now. I think once I get feedback from beta users is when I will be ready to start talking about it. I may wait until I have something ready to sell. Kind of still trying to decide how close I want to keep those cards to my chest. But progress is coming along nicely.
Are you thinking about doing like a batch of boards for a finite number of early adopter types who want to play around with it before you go bigger than that?
So I've got enough hardware to Vince is pointing at himself, trying to volunteer himself as an early adopter.
I thought he was having a stroke. I wasn't too sure what was going on there for a second. Go ahead.
I've got hardware now to build 5 of them because that's kind of the minimum board order, right? When you send boards out for fabrication, they make 5 at a time. So I've got enough to build 5 of these things. I'm going to be keeping at least 1, possibly 2 for myself, and then I've got 3 other people already signed up as beta testers. I'm looking for people who do this specific thing, and again, I'm being vague on purpose, sorry. So people who do this specific thing regularly so that they can really provide some very good constructive feedback.
Okay, so if you're listening to this and you're into the thing that Mark can't tell you what it is,
Yeah.
then
And you do it
reach out.
regularly.
And you do it
you
regularly.
do it regularly.
Yes.
Got to do it
Yeah.
regularly.
So how
and you can
okay,
provide
so,
good constructive feedback.
Mike, you're muted.
So how long from now would you guess that you will make the grand unveiling as to what this thing does?
No later than February. I will
2022.
promise you no later than February, because February is my decision point. I will either be going, you know what, I'm turning this into a business and I'm going to be investing 5 digits of my own money into making a production run of these things to turn around and try and sell. Or I'm going to say, you know what, for whatever reason, I'm not going to do this, and I will probably take all of my work that I've done and open source it. In either case, I'm going to be making that decision by around February.
So this is a big deal.
I think so. It's going to, if this works out, it's going to be a business for me. This is going to become my day job if this works out.
Excellent.
Yeah. And I've got a whole bunch of other project ideas, product ideas, excuse me. These will be finished products. These are not kits. These are not projects. These are not, like, one of the whole points of what I'm building is that it is an appliance. And that'll make more sense when it's time to announce it. So anyway, I'm not trying to tease everybody, although I guess from a marketing standpoint,
you
I kind of
kinda
am a little
tried.
bit.
Whoa.
But I'm trying to let people know that it is making a lot of progress. The hardware is good and solid at this point, and I'm moved on full-time to the software, so that's good. Moving on past that, what else is on my workbench right now? Well, I have been having a hell of a good time running FT8 from my phone on my Flex 6400. I found that the Smart SDR software for iOS, the person who makes the Smart SDR software for iOS has a add-on feature. You have to pay for it. And I think it's like $20. I mean, it's not super expensive, but it's not cheap. It's not free. But it was a shut up and take my money moment when I noticed it, that he included FT8 support in Smart SDR. So you can do FT8 natively in the iOS app. And it's meant for iPad, but he did make a UI that works on the Max devices or the Plus devices. And so I've been running a iPhone 8 Plus for many years, and then I literally just upgraded to a 13 Pro Max because I like the big screens, because getting old, eyes, things.
You can thank
Go ahead.
Marcus. You can thank Marcus. Delta Lima 8 Mike Radio Echo is the author of that.
Okay.
He's a super nice guy and one of the nicest people you would ever meet.
Yeah.
And obviously very smart as
Yeah.
well. So you may want to reach out to him on your own.
I actually have. I've chatted with him in email because there is a particular characteristic of how it operates that I'm like, I don't think this is the way WSJTX does it. More importantly, I don't think this is the way WSJTX expects to decode it. And I took a while for me to be able to explain what my issue was. And he's like, oh, yeah, no, I know I did it that way, and I don't see a reason to change it. And so I haven't pushed. But yeah, we did have a little bit of an exchange, and I glowed tremendously to him. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. So anyway, I've been playing a lot of FT8 from my phone remotely. So that's been a lot of fun. It's not so much a Workbench thing, although I did just bring home my dad's old iPad that I just inherited. It needs to be cleaned up and wiped and have OS updates and all that fun stuff applied to it. But it will become my new smart SDR console until I get the mythical Maestro at some point in the future.
What's a
Probably just won't
Maestro?
let up on that one.
Nope,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna. No,
Mark and several thousand others, I wager.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike.
No.
Well, that's why to jump in, I actually forwarded George an email tonight from Sequent. What, I can't pronounce. Anyway, it was Sequent, and it was a very long, detailed email. If you subscribe to the stuff about, they had something all ready to go, and sorry, you can't get that processor anymore. You got to start over.
I'll be honest with you.
that
That's
story.
actually something that's coming up on my Secret Squirrel project. I said there were a couple of things that I might change. One of them is the microcontroller, whether I'm going to have to change to a different microcontroller based on part shortages.
I heard
I even ran into
6502 is
that with
making
a-
a comeback.
Just
I even
figure
ran
out
into that
whatever
with
the
a-
Ford F-150 uses. I'm sure that'll be fine.
What was that, George?
I was
Rod's
gonna say that
not quicking.
Well, you guys are too fast on the button. I ran into that problem even with the voltage regulator. So Mike's built the little TR switching circuit board, and that it's designed to use a little switching regulator that's a drop-in replacement for a 7805. But if you put a 7805 in there, it'll work fine. It just gets hot. If you put the switcher in there for a couple of more bucks, it runs nice and cool, but you got to get the part. And so I went to look up the part for Mike so I can tell him what to get. And there's zero inventory anywhere.
Yeah.
And this is a part that 6 months ago you could get it, by the thousands. So, and it's just a switching regulator.
All right. I do have to read one of the comments because, dang it, Marty, he figured out what it is. Marty comments, it's the N6 MTS GPS-enabled turbo encapulators with Illudium Q36 explosive space modulator.
And who said that?
Marty.
Marvin.
Marty Atcher.
Or
Marvin
the
The
Martian.
Martian.
Oh, you dirty rat. No, that was different. Anyway, Iridium Q36 explosive space
No.
modulator.
We were talking the other night that I thought it was the oscillation overthruster.
Yep. So, in any case, in keeping up with new product ideas, I keep coming up with new product ideas, and I am trying my best to not squirrel and like tangent off and build another thing while I'm still working on the Secret Squirrel project. I'm like, no, stay concentrated, cut a ticket, put it in the backlog. You'll come back to it later, but get this one out first. And my ADD is sending me all over the place. As for the station automation stuff that George has us all tapping our veins for, one of the things
Complain about the price.
one of the things that I'm having a good time with the FT8, but my antenna is static. I can't control my rotator remotely. And so, Mike, you made a recommendation for a kit that you can put in the tail twister rotator controller that spits out an RS-232 port on the other side. I have that kit. I need to assemble it and stick it in the rotator and probably hook it up to a Node-RED system, which I don't have. This will be my first Node-RED device, so that I can adjust my rotator remotely from a web page or whatever. And then flip back over to Smart SDR and do FT8 and just kind of be able to go back and forth and do all that stuff remotely. So I'm looking forward to that. I've got parts from George for the DMR hotspot board. I want to put one of those up so I can actually have a DMR hotspot at home in a convenient place and deployment in my rack. And I want to work with George to design an SA818 or a DRA818 based board for the station controller automation stuff that has a Raspberry Pi on it, and then put a I2S codec, so a sound chip, input and output sound chip, and send that out to the 818 module and use it either as an all-star. I would use it as an all-star node here at home, but one could also use it for like a small low-power local repeater or linking node or something like that. But just whatever it is, it would be a station controller card in bunny rabbit ears, but it goes to the DRA modules. Oh, it dawns on me that your station controller doesn't have a Raspberry Pi on every board, does it?
Not on every board, no.
Shoot, so those would be two different things then.
Well, no, you could do it a couple ways. You could do exactly what you described, which is to have a single board with a Raspberry Pi on it, and there's a little bit of space. There's about 1 by 4 inches or so of space where you can put whatever you want, and that module would easily fit on there. So you can do exactly what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could take the Raspberry Pi on one board, and you could put the RF on a different board, and just have the boards, connect to each other and stack them. So you can do it either way.
But I thought one of your goals was to be able to use these in your station controller. So I guess what it would be is a Raspberry Pi with a sound chip on it that would go to a pair on the backplane, right? It would claim one of the repeater controllers, and so that would get you an all-star node into your repeater.
Yeah, there's multiple applications here. One application is what you described, which is an access point.
Yeah.
So
just completely standalone without the rest of the backplaner controllers or anything.
Yeah, and so all it's getting off the backplane is just power, and
yeah.
and it's conveniently not yet another box on your bench.
Yes.
It's in the rack, so that's got its own appeal, and that's the same idea with the digital hotspot modules as well.
Yeah.
The other thing you could do is you could break this up into a couple of components. You can have a Raspberry Pi board, and you can have a separate radio module board. And then you could put the sound card on one or the other of those boards and have them either talk through unused pins on the backplane, or if you put them side by side, you can just put a header between the two, which is the way I would do it.
Yeah.
That way you have a little sandwich of boards. So actually, I did a prototype of that with 3 boards. One board was Raspberry Pi. The second board was a URI, which is an interface sound card thing from DMK Engineering, and then there was a third board that was an interface to the radio. So anyway, there's a bunch of different ways we could do it. So I definitely want to work with you on that.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think that those might be useful for other people to actually build up their own little hotspots if they wanted to as well.
Yeah. Yeah. If somebody's got the backplane of much solder consumption. I heard you. I was actually listening to the stream earlier tonight when while I was eating dinner, and I heard you guys talking about soldering up those backplanes. So in any case, so that's what's on my workbench.
Very good. So
who's
George?
Left? George, what's on your workbench?
Glad you asked, Mark. Well, in the spirit of All-Star, first off, I have connected my node to the hub 55915. I've noticed there's 3 different other nodes that have connected there, but I've never heard anybody actually talking. So it'd be nice to get some traffic on there, but that's okay. So that's cool.
Typical ham radio. Nobody's calling CQ.
Well, as propagation hams, Rod, all we want to do is make it work and not really use
true.
it. I mean,
those all-star bands are dead.
Yeah, exactly. Propagation stinks on the internet. So anyway, I've been using my Sherry All-Star node extensively. I'll leave it up all the time. It works great, and it uses those exact same RF modules that you're using for your access point thing. So Proofpoint works great. In fact, I contacted the guy who runs whatever it is, Kits for Hams. Oh, that's one of the things we'll talk about in the shopping show that we're going to do here in a few minutes. And I said, yeah, I'd like to get another one. He's like, well, that's great, but I can't get Raspberry Pis. And I thought, what? And so I figured, well, that can't be right. And so I looked at a lot of the usual suspects. And in fact, a lot of them are either sold out or have very limited supply of Raspberry Pis, weirdly enough, much to my surprise. Now, maybe depends on the version you're going to get. I was looking at Pi 4s, but they're pretty much not available. So I don't know what the deal is there.
Same with 02Ws.
Oh, really?
Just pretty much not available. Unless you want to buy like the deluxe kit with all the accessories in it. Not great if you're just updating your existing hardware.
Yeah. So that's the problem with buying it for like these rack projects. See, all you need is the Pi, which depending on the Pi you get should be $70 or whatever. It depends on how much RAM, etc. But you can't, because the only one you can get is the Cana kit for $159, which includes the wall wart. And all of that stuff is great if it's the first time you buy one, but if you just need the board, it doesn't really help you a whole lot. So anyway, there's that. I have a new radio that I'm playing with that we'll talk about in a little bit here, which is a Lab 599 TX500. And that's pretty cool. So I spent a lot of time on the bench making cables for that. And I griped about connecting my 705 to the computer and getting noise over the USB cable and sticking in a little USB fob that's essentially a ground isolator to find out that it generates a big birdie in and of itself. So that was kind of a clunker, and I was going to check that. And when I went to hook up the USB sound card interface to the Lab 599, I got hellacious noise in the radio. And on a lark, I thought, well, I'll plug in the isolator and see what happens. So I plug in the isolator into the sound fob, plug it into the computer, and all the noise went away. So I haven't tuned around to see if that birdie is there or not, but it eliminated the broadband noise that was just coming from the computer. So maybe that USB isolation thing is not totally useless, just somewhat useless. So anyway, I don't know what the perfect answer is yet, but I'm scoping that out. I did pick up a QRP Labs QDX. It's sitting on the bench in its unassembled state. So I figure at this point I can sell it on eBay for about $600. So I'm waiting to see what the QDX futures market looks like in the next week or so to see if I'm going to keep it or not.
And bidding here on the Ham Radio Workbench will start at $400.
That's like the D74 future, right?
Yes, and after hours trading, the QDX was going for $600. Let's see. So anyway, yeah, so that's pretty much what's on my bench. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. And then when we come back, we're going to jump into, the shopping show. That's what we're here for. We'll be right back.
What?
That's just crazy talk if we're here for a shopping show.
All right. Well, you're
I
not
came to talk about
so
radio.
That's segment one. Segment one is in the can, so to speak. Does anybody else need to be before we start into the next segment?
I am going to top up my pop. I won't be far away.
Okay, do so. We're going to take a 2-minute break. If you're watching on the stream, this is the excitement of audio production where we sit around and go, so how's your medical condition?
That was
I got to show you my cup. This is a present. Has 3 little icons on it. Eat,
eat,
sleep, and
ham
radio. So
Nice.
highly recommended.
Is that a custom number or available somewhere?
It
And
was
is there
on
a
one
link
of the usual suspects. I forget if it was Cafe Press or Zazzle or one of those things, but it was like someone already made it, so you can just order it up.
I just use the free cup from my former employer.
You know, most logo wear is usually terrible. So I usually
This is a
check
Yeti.
that stuff.
This is a good cup.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's
That's
a
yeah,
because you had a
they splurged.
you
guys had
top drawer
money.
employer.
Yeah, my former
Yeah,
employer.
So Mark, I got
spaceships
my-
and
All right, now that we're not in an audio segment, can we go Kiyo Pro? Okay,
got-
nice. Yeah.
It's a beefy camera.
It is.
That's, by the way, this one. I stuck it to the window.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually looking at my laptop screen instead of my 2 big screens because the Razor
mic?
doesn't fit between my 2 screens. So I have to sit it on top of the laptop instead of between the 2 screens. But while we're not in an audio segment, this is why you guys want to watch the live stream, because I wouldn't do this in while we're on the podcast because it just doesn't make good audio. But this is the MCHF rig. So Vince was talking about MCHF earlier. Wrong one. There we go.
Yep.
And so it's bigger
looks
and
nice.
thicker than the 599 that George has. So it's a little bit thicker this
KX2
way.
size.
What's that? Yeah, it's about
KX2
Yeah.
size.
Six.
This is bigger than a
Three-ish.
2. This is closer to a 3. Yeah.
That's
It's
right.
KX 2.5.
Yeah, this is probably 15 to 20 centimeters. Probably closer to 20 centimeters wide. So it's not small. But otherwise, as a radio, I like it. It's got a big screen. It's got my favorite function buttons down here that are, change function based on the context of where you are in the application. It's got several buttons that, don't really change function. They're there, and then the tuning knob and whatnot. And it's got all, a crap ton of connectors. Let's see here. Is that the way you want to be able to see it to read it?
Yep. That is correct.
Yeah, so it's got line in and line out if you want to interface it to a computer, or better yet, USB. So it does show up as a USB sound card and as a USB serial port. So it is just perfect for plugging in through a single USB cable to get into digital modes and whatnot.
How much is that?
What's that?
How much is it?
So it depends. If you buy it as a kit and assemble it yourself, which is quite the project, this thing is pretty dense inside here.
It sure
You
as
can
heck
get it for
is.
as little as about $300.
Oh, that would be great. I love.
That kind of dense project.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted the radio. I wasn't looking for this to be a project, and I wanted the radio with the antenna tuner. And so I ended up paying just shy of $600 US for the assembled one with the built-in antenna tuner. And I do not regret it at all. I've gone out on the field and used this a couple of times. Not a lot, but enough times that I know I like it a lot. My one complaint about this is that it has no built-in battery. You have to provide your own battery, and it's a 2.1 millimeter barrel plug there. I would have preferred Anderson power poles or something built in, but that's literally
off the
my
record,
one complaint about it.
So I use power poles, but I actually use XT60s more often, but that's from my model plane flying days.
Yeah.
Because they cost $1 each and they're a little more robust, but you have to solder them. So
Yeah.
All right, are we all
I'll
good to go, gents?
So yeah, I'm
Onward.
monitoring our web analytics, and thanks to Mark, we've had our first boost of buying within. I got to say the Workbench section, folks, normally is a good boost in terms of buying behavior. But
this
What
is
did-
search
what did I
engine
sell?
so one of those radios, yeah,
Oh, the MCHF?
yeah.
Nice.
So
Yeah, too bad we don't actually monetize any of this stuff.
yeah, it is a shame, really.
Yeah, it's a missed
All those
opportunity, I
Amazon
think.
links we put on, and we don't get a dime.
Yeah,
out
I
of
know.
it.
Really, we can probably mine that. All right, I think if we're all set, let's come back in. You all set?
Mike was trying to say something. Are you good, Mike?
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was going to say, I actually am taking an SEO course. It's pretty scary. The search engine optimization stuff. It's
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right.
All right. We're going to come back in 5. So the first segment in the shopping show here, I want to focus on the big ticket items first. So let's talk about HF radios. So we don't really have to talk about like $10,000 HF radios, but let's talk about HF radios. So normally when we do this segment, the very first thing we do, and Jeremy made a joke out of this last year. He said, "Okay, real quick, which HF radio?" And everybody said the 7300, and that was done. It was like 10
End of
seconds,
show.
and we're on to the next topic because there is one answer. So the trick this year is not to pick the same stuff we would have picked in the last 3 years, just because otherwise it's like, well, you tick off the list of the standard stuff. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things happening in the HF radio world these days. Does anybody want to start with an interesting suggestion?
So I want to go straight for the kill. George, I'm hyper jealous of your latest acquisition. And maybe it's because I like ruggedized radios.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
this whole Lab 599 thing is not going to be well suited for. So, dear listeners, when you stop your car, when you stop your lawnmower, go search on this thing because it is really different and really pretty, at least in my mind.
It is really different and it's really pretty.
Plus one.
So it's a lovely size. I have to tell you. So it's about an inch thick. It's about 3.5 inches deep and about 8 inches wide or so. So it's a brick. So compare this like to the MCHF, it's probably half the thickness of it. So for those of you on the live stream, you can see the unveiling of the Velcro and the removal of the covers off the display and the
So
knobs.
naturally, George has put covers and accessorized it already. He's had this thing for all of 6 days.
Oh yeah,
and
you gotta pimp your radio, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just go stock. I mean, you have to, tweak it.
He's bought every accessory already.
I
I
the
know
only
you.
the only accessories I haven't bought are ones I really don't want. But
Have
there's
you
not that
bought
much out
spare
there.
connectors to make your own cables yet?
I did. Oh, I bought like
That was all
a
week.
metric
Of course you
ton
did.
of connectors. Yeah, I've already made my own. That's why I made the computer, data cable, because that they don't give you. They give you one of everything, but that they don't give you. So I already wired up my Heil headset. I've, CW key, the whole enchilada. So and I put this thing on the air, which is really weird. Normally it's just like, hey, make a contact and like sell it in 6 months. Last weekend on the sideband sweepstakes contest, I hooked this thing up to end-fed 20-meter half wave, and every station that I heard, loud stations, I called them, and I think I must have at least 9, if not 10. I missed one. One station didn't come back to me, but in 1 or 2 calls, all these loud stations came right back to me and gave me a reasonable signal report. So works 10 watts, worked great. I was just really pumped, and there's a ton of stations on, so that was great. So we're going to do a deeper dive with Thomas K4SWL when he comes on the show, but let me give you my summary takeaway with this, and if you want to ask any questions, Rod, or anybody else, we could do that for a few minutes. This is a very specialized radio. I mean, first of all, as radios go, its performance is fine. I mean, it has a nice receiver. The transmit audio sounds great. It just works, like you would expect. These days, every radio works, right? It works reasonably well. The thing that's special about this radio is it's milled out of a solid block of aluminum. So they hog out all of this space here, and then they put the electronics in it, and then they screw it together, and it's watertight. So literally, you could hose it down. In fact, there's a video of one of the UK distributors who put it on the ground and like dumps water on it. So if you have any considerations about taking a radio to the field, and you want to take a radio that you don't have to worry about, and we always joke around about getting Cheeto dust in it and spilling your Mountain Dew on it or whatever you do, that's not a problem because you can hose it off and you'd be fine.
These are the Motorola HTs of portable HF rigs.
You got it. It's the Motorola
HT
of HF.
It'd be great for a canoe trip.
It'd be awesome for
Yeah,
a canoe trip.
yeah.
Seriously. So the way they also the way they milled the thing, you can look at the ends of it. The slab actually extends vertically a little bit, so that this vertical elevation, much like the Sidekicks panels for a KX2 or KX3, this is milled into the body. So if the thing falls over on its face, the knobs are protected. On top of which, I got these plastic covers, and those are 3D printed, and they're really nice.
That's very well thought out.
Yeah, and just a little piece of Velcro keeps that faceplate on there, and it works great. The same guy, by the way, I'll have to put it in the show notes. I don't recall his name or call. He who prints the 3D printed covers also prints 3D printed caps that will screw onto the otherwise already weatherproof connectors, so that you can further weatherproof your weatherproof connectors when you're not using them. All of this really speaks to me. So when I look at all this stuff, I think, okay, if I'm taking my radio to the field, I really don't want to worry about it. I don't want to think like, oh man, I'm going to scratch the delicate screen or anything. So anyway, bottom line, comparing this to, let's say, the 705, and I've used the 705 a lot, and I love the 705. It's one of my favorite all-time radios. It still is. But they're really different radios. They're very different radios in the sense that the 705 is a great radio to put on your desk, and it's got a beautiful display, and it's got every feature you'll want. The only thing it doesn't have is it's 10 watts, and if you want 100 watts, it doesn't have that. But if you can get away with that and there's no tuner, then it's a marvelous radio. I mean, it's just it is a great radio, and certainly you could take it to the field. I mean, we're splitting hairs here. So the difference between that and this one is a simpler radio. It doesn't have as many features, of course. Obviously, no VHF, UHF. Obviously, The display is not color. This is a monochrome display. It does have a pan adapter, but the monochrome display is just not as nice as the color display on the 705. However, do you really need that? You know, so I think if you're going to go outdoors with a portable radio and you're going to baby it, you're going to take the 705 and put it in a roll cage, or you're going to put it in your Pelican case, or in my case, my Nanook case, then that's great. It's perfectly fine. But you could take the Discovery 500 and you could just shove it in your backpack and not even put it in a case, and you wouldn't think twice about it.
So on the upside, it's super field ready. It's somebody said here in the chat, it has the look of an ANPRC field radio, like one
Yes.
of the military radios. And I had actually grilled George earlier in the week about this, about whether the connectors were actually military connectors, because it looks, at first glance, it looks an awful like the twist-ons that you get on some of those field radios. It's not. It's very reminiscent of a traditional microphone screw-on connector.
They're not amphenol.
Yeah, exactly.
But keep in mind, you're not going to open this case. It's sealed. So no, batteries are external. Tuners are external, right? There's no internal tuner, right?
Yep, that's right.
So it's very much about resonant antennas. But hey, you're going out in the field, carry resonant antennas. You're going to be better off.
Yeah, actually, for this one, I use a end-fed half-wave 20-meter antenna, and I have a link to add to it to make it run on 40. And you don't need a tuner, and and it's broadband. It doesn't matter, so that'll work just great.
So you brought up two things, and your ZM2 tuner, which weighs
Yes.
nothing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because I have one as well, and arguably is the best tuner for $70 you will ever buy.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want
That's
twist
fact.
knobs, and it weighs grams. But George kept writing up a couple of things, and George, I'm gonna quiz you. I know you know the answer. You said you made a lot of contacts at 10 watts, and that sounds huge. But how many S units is different between 10 watts and 100 watts? And most of us know the answers.
Well, let's see.
And at one.
One
What's
and a
that?
half.
Well, one and a bit.
Well, I think
10
this is.
dB.
So I get your point. I'll take issue with that, though. A lot of people say this. They'll say, "What's the difference between 100 watts and 10 watts in terms of S units?" What really, where the rubber meets the road is, what does it sound like?
Correct.
If you're listening to a 100-watt station and you can understand it, but it's very noisy and hard to make out, if they drop to 10 watts, they're gone. So the fact that this, it's only a few S units is really misleading.
You could lose them in
on the other
QSP
hand,
too.
That's right. On the other hand, if the 10-watt station is copyable, maybe not super strong, but perfectly copyable, if it went to 100 watts, it would be more copyable, but you would still make the contact. So it depends on where you are, on the edge of being able to listen to it or not. Personally, I think 10 watts and 100 watts is a really interesting dividing line. From 100 watts to 200 watts, or 100 watts to 300 watts, not so much of a difference. 100 watts to kilowatt, big difference.
10
but when you
watts
talk
to 100
10 to
watts,
100,
big difference.
so
Same number
for me
decibels.
personally, sorry,
Same number of decibels, 10 to 100, 100 to 1,000.
yeah,
One
yeah,
S unit.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's the point, right? Is the QRP radios, and this is the misconception. QRP radios are not for, quote, beginners or new hams. Okay, buy, people out there, if you just got your license, go buy a 100-watt radio. You're going to be so much happier. But within a couple of years, it sure is going to be a lot of fun to get out there in the field and using a QRP radio.
So QRP radios on a compromised antenna is not a good mix.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's
all-
really what
that's
I'm
right.
saying.
And let me emphasize, that's why
Agreed.
I used an end-fed half-wave full-size
Yeah.
antenna. Because if I was using, let's say, one of these popular highly loaded antennas where you're on 20 meters with a 5-foot piece of metal and a big coil, or much more likely on 40 meters with a 5-foot piece of wire and a bigger coil, you might as well just jab yourself with a fork. I mean, it's just painful.
But yeah, I said this on a chat the other day. Like a G5RV, incredibly popular antenna. It's an antenna of convenience, not of
Yeah.
performance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and how many
I'll shut
people
up
are
now.
running? How many people are running our QRP rigs on a G5 RV?
Probably more than you think.
Well, I hope not.
So-
Well, and a G5 RV is a call sign, not an antenna. But let's come back to a question that was in that came from our live studio audience. How is the display on this outdoors compared to the 705?
It's actually better because it's a monochrome LCD, and it actually looks really good out in the sun. Whereas the color, conventional, beautiful, like I don't know if it's an OLED, whatever it is on the 705, will be a little more washed out. So that's kind of a really a plus for the 599. So for me, when I look at this, I think like if I want to go set up in the field, operate sideband or CW, I would much rather have the 599, honestly. Now we're really splitting hairs here. If I only had the 705, it'd be an awesome radio. I'd be very happy. It's not like it's a bad radio. It's just this is just that much more ideal for that kind of an application because I'm most likely trying to watch the space and the weight and all that other stuff too. However, if I were sitting at home and this radio lived on my desk 99% of the time, I'd much rather have the 705. There's just no question that it's a more beautiful display and has a lot more features. So it's very much, that's why I said this is really a very much built for a given purpose.
And for anybody from the radio manufacturers listening to this for field radios, I am shocked that somebody hasn't used an e-ink display on a radio. Now, e-ink displays are used on readers, right? Like on your Amazon Kindle, but they use almost no power. They retain their displays when they're turned off so that you could like literally turn it off when you're not, I don't know, transmitting or something or actually making a change. And it would be incredibly power efficient. It, of course, holds up beautifully in the sunlight. So
The problem is that they do have a limited number of changes, and so if you are trying to change a frequency display, those kinds of things that get updated regularly on a radio screen, the e-ink displays are not great for that. The refresh rate is incredibly slow, and the little pebbles inside or whatever they're called, they tend to get stuck either in the up or the down position over time as you transition them so many times. That's why they work great for e-readers, because you throw a screen of text up and then it remains static while you're reading it. And then you throw another text screen of text up, and then it remains static while you're reading it. For things that update regularly, the e-ink is not great.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if you could do that dynamically and it wouldn't, be bad, then that'd be a lovely
That'd
display.
be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. This is probably about as close as you get to the right kind of a display. Last comment is just in general. I think these guys have zeroed in on a market segment that's completely unserved. I think what we've seen in the last 20 years is the transition from really lousy portable radios to amazing portable radios. I mean, we talked about this MCHF radio, the K2, the K3. I mean, these are unbelievable radios. I mean, they're great. they're great radios by really kind of any modern measure. But this is the first time someone's really taken that field operating to the logical extent that it should, and I'm really surprised no one else has done this. So I'm very interested to see what's going to happen over the next several years. I think if the big manufacturers were smart, I mean the big manufacturers that have a play in this space, which today is really Yaesu and ICOM, and Elecraft, right? Because it's really not Kenwood. They're out of this part of the market for sure. None of the other sort of second tier radio companies do it, and Flex doesn't really do a portable radio either. So even though I'm a fan, but of those few, none of them have focused on this at all. They're all making conventional, either conventional radios like the Japanese guys, or like Elecraft did, which is to make a trail friendly form factor, but it's still a delicate radio. The K2 is a delicate radio. It's, even with the retrofit, the screen cover and everything, it's porous. I mean, if it snowed or rained, I'd never have that problem, but if you're doing soda in Colorado, you're going to get snow in it. So this thing, snow, not a problem. So, by the way, the other thing that's interesting about the design, last word, is you might notice on the back of the unit that there's some little gold spots there, and these are for pogo pin connectors. And so they already designed the chassis with the idea of having a battery pack that will sit on the back, and the electrical connection is going to be through pogo pins to the radio body. So there's no cable. At least that's the way I would imagine they would be doing this. And they are building a battery pack, and they showed a prototype of it. And the interesting thing about the battery pack, it's about the size of the radio, is the battery pack has space in it for 6 18650 cells, and you supply your own. So the batteries are, they're everywhere, and they're very good batteries for radio application. And so that frame will hold those 6 batteries, and I don't know what the charging situation is, but that'll be very cool. I don't know how they're going to attach it to this. So that's not obvious. So we'll see how they actually do that. But I'm curious to see what they do. Oh, there one last thing. There's also an outfit in Germany, a fellow who makes a power amplifier that's the same form factor, that is the output power is somewhere between about 40 to 60 watts, depending on. I think it'll go up to 60 watts, but I think they recommend you run it at like 40 or 50 watts. So that's kind of a magic. 50 watts is a magic number. Whenever I operate a portable HF on a 100 watt radio, I never operate more than 50 watts. Anyway, so that's kind of a good number. And that amp will work with any radio. It'll work with a 705. It'll work with an 817 or whatever. So but they're not cheap. Oh, the amp also has a tuner built into it, so that kind of solves that problem. So anyway, at this point so far, I'm like a really big fan. I think that, I didn't jump on the bandwagon when they first came out, but I'm glad I picked this.
We almost did.
Almost, but it was too weird. But I've kind of really.
You're unweirded.
I'm totally into it. Now, if I were only going to buy one, 599 or 705, that'd be a really tough call. I'd have to really look at what I do. If I really spend 90% of my time outdoors, I'd get the 599. If I spend 90% of my time warming the seat in the shack, I'd get the 705. And then you could take it, you could use it in either mode for the rest of the time.
Very
Or
good.
both.
I'd like to hear after you get a chance to even do anything like digital modes and stuff, and start seeing how good the dynamic range is, because I know what one of them is. So we'll see how the receiver holds up.
I finally got the cable working. So I did get FL Digi working on it. I haven't gotten WSJTX to work yet because I don't have the cat cable figured out. So I haven't gotten there. Just got the audio thing working.
Julian OH8STN loves his Discovery 500.
Yeah. Yeah, he's put
By the
out
way,
some
Mark-
wonderful videos.
Yeah,
By the way-
there are some really good videos he has put out for sure. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, Mark VA3HES. He's a new ham, by the way. Says the connectors are on the TX500 or GX12, so they look like an aviation connector. I thought it was my world.
And our friend Tim says Lab 599 has set up US-based repair depot in Reno, Nevada. Tim is one of my friends here in the Bay Area, and he's a soda expert. And one of the first baby soda thing I ever did, Tim and I and some other guys did a 1-point soda thing here in Silicon Valley. And so we go up to the top of the hill. I wouldn't call it, it's not a mountain. We go up the hill. And so I pull out my little KX2 radio, and Tim pulls out his ICOM 7100 and control head and a battery the size of a, like a huge bat. It's like, holy mackerel, man. How did you carry all that? Oh, I see 7,000. He just posted a note here. So, but it was like a big old radio with a huge battery, and like the guy is amazing. So anyway.
All right, we're half an hour into this segment, and we're still only talked about one radio.
No
All right,
kidding.
Let's
So
move
let's
on to the next thing. Who's hosting this thing anyway?
I'll get you there.
All right.
So let's move from ruggedized innovative design to like really not ruggedized innovative design. And let's talk about the QDX and the QCX at the same time. So who wants to talk to those products? Who's got one?
Well, I've got a QCX.
Who's
George
got a
has a
QCX.
QDX, which
Depends
he's
on
already
who's-
taunted us about.
who's? Yeah, I know. Let's talk about George's soon to be at auction unit.
My QDX. So
Yes.
I was watching some videos of guys doing the QDX, you know, building it and getting it to work, and it's pretty amazing because it's a digital only radio that runs. I'm trying to remember, 40, 20. I forget which other bands, maybe 30. I forget. I only care about 40 and 20. And it's a few watts, and everything's built in. And you hook it up to your computer and an antenna, and you go to town. And I think Hans is selling them for, I forget what it was. It was like $60 with the case. I think the case was $20. So it's amazing. Now you have to build it, but there's not that many parts on it. There you have to wind a few toroids. It's not so bad.
Recommended for new hams or not?
I wouldn't recommend it for new ham. Now, so one of the guys in the chat here said that he started with QRP and it was fine. I think that you know, if you know what you're doing and you know what you're getting into, then I think the QDX would be a great kit for someone who, not their first kit, but if you've built stuff before, sure, you can build it. It's not that hard. And this, you know, it'll connect to your WSJTX software or whatever you're running and work great. So, you know, if you know what you're getting into, I think it's fine. But I think, Rod, your advice about stick with a 100-watt radio as a general advice for the masses, I think that's really right. Because you want your first HF experience to be really positive. And if you're running 5 watts, you know, it's a challenge. So that's really for, doesn't have to be somebody who's very experienced, but you have to know what you're getting into.
Well,
Yeah,
the QDX does more than 5 watts. I think it's at least 10.
No, I don't think so. Let's find out.
Yeah. The other thing to note about the QDX is that it's only good at outputting one phase coherent tone at a time. So it'll work for Whisper and FT8 and all of those modes. It does not work on PSK31. It will not do it might be able to do RTTY actually. But it can't do like sideband or CW or anything like that, right? It is really an FT8 radio, is kind of a way to think of it.
5 watts.
It is 5 watts?
Yep, 5 watts.
I thought he got more out of it with those with the 3 BS8 or 170s.
He's got 4 of those in the final. But
One of them is a driver, the 3 of the finals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least that's how it is on all of his other. Oh, that's right, because it's not a Class E, because it is multi-band.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so his Class E designs, like the QCX, those Class E designs are mono band, because the Class E infrastructure inherently, unless you do some switching of components, are inherently single band. And this being mono band, he's not using Class E. That's right. Okay, so he's not getting as much power out of it.
But I got to say 5 watts. I mean, I've run my 705 on FT8 using, 5 watts, and it works. It works.
It'll get the job done, certainly. Yeah. But the way the radio works is actually really interesting. So it's got a USB sound card to the computer, right? It looks like a USB sound card to the computer, or is it line in? I can't remember which. Does it have the USB built in?
I believe so.
Okay, so it looks like a sound card to the computer, and your computer plays an audio tone over that sound card. The microcontroller on the QDX figures out what audio frequency that tone is, figures out what dial frequency the computer's trying to tune the radio to over the CAT software, adds those two together, and then outputs a signal from an SI5351. So, like, it doesn't even use the audio tone from the sound card to transmit RF. Literally what it does is it just looks at the zero crossings on that audio tone and figures out what frequency it is. And then it uses that number, the frequency, to be able to regenerate a brand new RF tone from the SI5351. It's really kind of weird.
So it seems to me that maybe we'll do a deep dive in some future episode on this particular
QDX.
topic on the QDX, and maybe maybe QCX too, but just to give us an idea for, I would say for propagation hams, if you want to build something that you kind of put together yourself, I won't say built yourself, but put together yourself, and you want a hobbyist kind of experience,
I
then
would go
these are
with the
great.
I would recommend the QCX over the QDX in that case. I think the QDX is more pre-assembled
Right.
than the QCX does. If you want an assembly project, the QCX is a fantastic radio.
Well, okay. Well, to be specific, the Q. So just so people know what's the Q, and if they don't know what these two things are, the QCX is a CW radio. The QDX is a digital radio. So
Yeah,
they're
true.
they're two different
Different
modes. The QDX, the circuit board has, I don't know, half a dozen, 10 surface mount components. Those are pre-installed. All of the rest of the board is through hole, and you get to do it yourself. So that's like 8 or 9 toroids and a handful of discrete components in some connectors. So I think to your point, Rod, about this being a first time kit, it would be like in the old days, build your first CW transmitter. Which is like a dozen parts, and you can't build a radio with 2 parts, right? You need it's a little more complicated.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Although
I
people
do
have
think,
tried.
yes, I do think that this would be a good starter kit, realizing that it's not, if you've never soldered in your life, there might be a few challenges for you, but if you can solder, then yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now, moving from kitty things and other sorts of things to some oldie but goodie. Vince, you'd mentioned here the 450 and the 857. And what were you thinking? What were you thinking, Vince?
What was I thinking?
Wow, that came out completely the wrong way.
Well, I don't know. What way did you intend it? So we're already too deep into the time, so I'll come out of that rabbit hole. What was I thinking? I was thinking that these are still venerable, good, useful radios that are reasonably priced on the used market. Nobody said when I came on the show I couldn't suggest used gear. I found that out on the $250 Workbench when somebody scooped my Hacko soldering iron with a used Weller.
And you're still bitter about that.
I'm still wearing the scars of that.
Oh my. So
the 450D, great radio, decent receiver on it, good starter radio. I've got one on my bench. I'm in a high noise environment. There is absolutely no point in me investing money into a radio that's on Sherwood's list. I'm just not going to take advantage of a decent receiver. Sorry, Mike. I'd love to, but I can't.
The TS 590.
And I have 2 857s. One's in my Go kit and one's in my truck. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Very good. We've also got honorable mention here, the Bidex products and microbidex.
I still stand by those. The Bidex 40 and the microbidex I still think are fun projects to build, and they're usable, and I still love my old analog drifty as hell Bidex 40. It's a delight to play
AGC.
with. No age. I mean, this one barely has a VFO. I mean, like the variable and the variable frequency oscillator means that it never stays in one place. It's continuously varying.
It's spread
I had a
spectrum.
TS130.
Spread spectrum, exactly.
Nice.
Sorry,
Lyco 753.
So have we beat the HF radios to death, or is there anything more to say here?
Well, I did want to say one thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
So did George. But if actually getting on HF is something that's not foreign to you, there's a whole raft in SDR dongles and receivers. If you just wanted to listen and learn about different operational modes and decode stuff, whether it's, and not just our stuff, of course, because that's just doesn't make the budget here. But our SDR Play makes a ton of, very rock solid receivers. For heck, they're even cheap in Canada, right, Vince? They're $100, $130
They're so cheap,
Canadian.
I have 2 of them.
And if you get, that's it. You hook up a wire, you can get on the air, you can hear stuff. And I wish I had it when I was 15 when I got my ticket.
I purchased an SDR Play, and the next problem I had was I couldn't interface it to my Kenwood TS130 that was sitting on my bench, and that became the whole find a pan adapter tab and modify a Kenwood
Right.
TS130 to put in a pan adapter tap. I documented that project on my website. I did the same thing with my TS450.
So I want
Excuse
to
me, FT450. Oops.
I want to plus one on the SDR. I think the brands that I would really recommend, I totally agree. SDR Play is a great one because not only do they have good products, they have got very good support, very good documentation. The software is very well supported. You
Runs on
can't go
anything,
wrong.
right?
Yeah, you can't go wrong with SDR Play. The other brand that is really, really good is AirSpy. Similar situation, very nice products, reasonably priced. Documentation is really good. Support's really good. So AirSpy, SDR Play, and there's others too. But I would also, by the way, generally steer people away from the $20 DVB dongles because they're better than nothing for a stocking stuffer, sure. But if you really want to get somebody a nice receiver, you can spend $100 and get one of these.
They're mess around machines, which there's a lot of benefit to. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But especially if you're buying like for a teenager or something, like don't do it. Like just go get a Play.
The
or
RTL
something
SDR
like that.
dongles are fine, but they need pre-filtering. You need to put a bandpass filter on the front of them, and if they've
There's
got
no
a
front end.
bandpass filter, they're good. Yeah, there's no front end filtering at all on
But I
them.
mean, if you're giving
There's-
someone if you're giving someone a present, if you're saying, okay, we have a $10, $20, stocking stuffer, sure.
Yeah.
RTL SDR. But if you're thinking like, I want to get somebody a decent receiver and I don't want to give them a junky thing, then you could spend $100 or whatever it is and start getting yourself up into the AirSpy or the SDR Play Zone, $150, and you have a really nice, very nice radio.
Okay.
Mike?
So there was somebody asked about the SDR Play, whether the Duo or the non-Duo, essentially. So they make them either with one or two, spectral capture units in my world, but receivers. If you want to play with noise canceling and noise subtraction, or maybe do two things at once, buy the Duo. That's why I have one. I want to play in an urban area. I've got a Wyndham here out the back in my backyard. I'm in the city. I've put a 1 foot, because we've all talked about, we had, who's our VE6 on? John? We talked about having a noise antenna.
John
on, and I
V6
was-
Echo Yankee.
Thank you very much. And I was getting emails from VE3 EY. No wonder I couldn't think of it. Nick. Anyway, and so I've been playing here in the house with beam steering and whatever, and sort of got it to work. So, but there's more I have to understand to make that play. But yes, if you can afford it, go with the Duo. That's the end part of the story. It gives you more.
Yes,
in the
agreed
future.
completely. And if you're wondering the capabilities of that Duo, Victor Echo 6 Echo Yankee, Victor Echo 6 Echo Yankee on YouTube, and he has the demonstrations of diversity reception on this thing.
Yeah.
And the day that I saw this, my mind was blown. George?
By the way, and it's built like a tank. Go ahead, George.
Just one last little thing. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, Mike, because we kind of went by it really quick, and I think it's worth taking a quick pause. And that is the antenna tuners, the ZM2. I built one of those things like 10 years ago, and I've got a second one. So the ZM2, you can get it as a kit or you can get it pre-assembled, and I think the pre-assembled is like $90, and I think the kit is like 70 or something
70.
like that.
Yeah.
70, and this will tune anything. I mean, this is
Oh,
a
wet
surprisingly
noodle.
wide range tuner. The beauty of this little tuner, but first off, by the way, it's a manual tuner. So now there's we can spend a whole show on manual versus automatic tuners. I have used automatic tuners for years and years and years. However, I got to say, for portable operation, when you just don't want things to go wrong, you can't really go too wrong with one of these manual tuners, because if you forget the battery or whatever with the auto tuner, at least you don't have that problem with these. These are good for 15 watts max. So 705, FT817, KX whatever, although they probably have a tuner already built in, so don't have to worry about that. So this Lab 599. The thing that's awesome about these tuners, besides being fairly wide range, is there's an LED on this thing and a switch that says tune and operate. When you flip it into the tune position and you key down, the RF will cause the LED to light up. There's a diode, so it rectifies the RF, and it's enough voltage to cause the LED to turn on. Then you adjust the two capacitors or the switched capacitor here until the LED goes out. And when the LED goes out, you're at 1-to-1 SWR, and it's great. So anyway,
That's incredibly clever design.
Yeah. And when you look at the schematic,
genius.
it's like 4 parts, and you go, that's a brilliant idea. That is just a great idea. And then when you're done tuning, you flip it to operate, and now that takes the LED out of the circuit, and it works fine. So anyway, it's great suggestion, Mike. I think that's a winner. Whether you buy it assembled or kit, you can't go wrong with them.
You know, you feed that with some ladder line and a hunk of wire, you'd be surprised about how efficient how much energy you're actually radiating, not just turning into heat. And Raker said I should learn how to use a manual tuner. You should be able to, you'll figure out any manual tuner in about 10 minutes. Usually we say term for maximum smoke. This one's minimum smoke. You make the LED go out.
So actually, the funny thing is, like on these little tuners, even before you key up, all you do is you rotate the two caps for maximum noise in your receiver. And once you do that, you're in the ballpark. You flip into transmit once you flip the tune switch, and then you just adjust it for the LED to go out. I mean, it can't get easier than that. And it'll tune a noodle. I mean, the thing is really amazing.
I think we have our first purchase. Marty has bought a ZM2. Or
yes, our work is done.
Is that a ZM2? So, George, what do you think is the quintessential gotta have it VHF UHF radio?
Mobile or HT?
Mobile. Let's start there.
There's just
Rod,
so many. What's that?
I need Vince for that.
Okay.
Vince,
We got to kick somebody out of the chat room.
Off the whole channel. Okay, so keeping going. Let's move into VHF UHF.
Excellent suggestion. Vince just suggested that.
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah. You got that, Vince?
I'm just trying to cover for Vince while we go.
We can
pause.
We'll pause.
Pause. We got to take care of this.
Bear with us.
Like, I'm a moderator, but I don't know how to do anything about that.
I reported it, so you should be able to find it.
I could block.
Yeah.
There you go. We're good.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I did block user.
Now, they're not gone in YouTube yet, but they're gone here.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, gee, that was unplanned. Thank you very much for your patience while we deal with that intruder.
All right. So
Edward blocked it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Edward, can you tell us how you did that? Because I'm a moderator on that channel. I should be able to do something about that, but I didn't. Nothing made it
I think
obvious.
that's a
Jeff took
personal
care of it
block.
too. All right. I think we're good now.
Okay.
All right, so where were we?
So Vince, you were just saying VHF, UHF.
Let me go back to, so George, what do you think about VHF, UHF mobiles?
The problem with this is that there are so many to pick from, and they're all more or less the same. It really boils down to: do you want VHF and or UHF dual band? Do you want one VFO or two VFOs? And aside from that, they're all the same because the quality is pretty much universal. The only things to really look for in my mind that are different is a few have some either physical size that are interesting, or have interfaces for packet radio, or have built-in TNCs or some such thing. Or obviously, if you want a digital mode, pick your favorite digital mode. And it's kind of pretty straightforward there. One thing that's real interesting to me is Kenwood, who always, in my opinion, had the very best user interface of their VHF, UHF, FM radios, because you could actually figure it out without the manual, which is more than I can say for a lot of the other ones. One of the most popular radios ever is the TMD 710. There's a whole family, TMD 700, then the 710, and then new versions of the 710. and the 710 pretty much went obsolete and out of production. However, I noticed in the last couple of weeks that Ham Radio Outlet has, as they described it, a really big stock of 710s. But I think this is like the last and final batch. So I think the unit's officially out of production. But if you ever wanted a really great FM only dual band, dual VFO with a built-in packet TNC built into the radio, not just a connector for an external TNC, but a built-in TNC, then run out and get a D710. They're fairly expensive, but they're great radios. Mark, I know you've used some of these too, haven't you?
Yeah, I have the 700s. What were you saying, Vince? Go ahead.
The 710 is one of the few radios that has like a real genuine KISS mode TNC built into it.
Yes.
And the other thing it does is, for those of you listening in America, is crossband regulations state you have to have an ID on the output of your crossband. In Canada, that's not a restriction. The 710 is the only radio on the current market that does that, to the best of my knowledge. So those are two really key features. Nice big display for old guy eyes. I mean, that's nice too. Oh my gosh.
So the UI on the D700 and the 7, I have 700s. I have the earlier version of it. I don't have any 710s, but they're morally the same radio. Just the 710 has a built-in GPS and some other added features. They are, in my opinion, the best UI ever made on an VHF UHF mobile rig. All the right things are on the display. It's readable. It's all the buttons do exactly what you want them to do. You don't have to go digging around in menus to set features on your VFO. They're just wonderful radios, even disregarding all of the digital features, all of the packet features. If you just want a dual band VHF UHF radio for your car, in my opinion, you can't do better than the D700 or the 710. And then, of course, it has all of those other features as well. I absolutely love them. I own 4 of them at this point, the 700s.
So one other one that's a real contender, I think, is the ICOM 5100. So that's a D-Star and FM radio, but it's a remote head, dual band, big display, very big display. And it's the first ICOM mobile radio that I used where I thought the user interface was really reasonable. I thought it was on par with the Kenwood, whereas a lot of the other smaller ICOMs are just notoriously irritating.
And
the
UI. All the new Yaesus, like the 8700, the 8800, 8900, those displays bug me.
You know, I picked up because I needed to monitor our Fusion repeater, so I picked up an FTM 7250 for a couple $100 used. You know what? It has the best UI of simple radios. Has Fusion, whatever. I didn't have to crack the manual once to set tones or DCS tones, or even to program memories. And it's got that classic, like us old farts like, just a nice FM radio. It sits here on my desk, does VHF, monitor it receives on 220. So I can watch all our 220 repeaters, everything else. It scans and aircraft, and it scans like a Banshee.
Yeah.
And
700 also does aircraft band 220 and 1.2. It'll receive on 220 and 1.2.
But not like one of the many few that you don't have to really program it with a PC.
Yeah.
You know, it took me back to my Kenwood TM 741 days. You know,
Kyle just mentioned in the chat that the Yaesu FTM 400 is a nice radio. That's a very nice radio. You know, I mean, I think this is kind of why this was almost a really challenging question, because pretty much every radio from ICOM, Yaesu, Kenwood, and arguably even, you know, Olinco, and although they're less expensive, they're not quite as nice, but they're pretty darn nice. You know, they're all interchangeably really good radios. So it's almost impossible. You really wind up getting down seriously to like, how big do you want it? You know, do you want a remote head? Which digital mode do you want? Do you want the TNC built in? One of the other really brand new radios that I think looks like a great radio, I don't have one. It's the FTM or the FT6000, which is a single VFO Yaesu mobile radio where they highly simplified the UI. That looks like a great little radio. So you know, there's probably 20 good. Well, all the current production units are good. It just depends on what features you want, really.
Well, and that's just it. And so when customers pop by the candy store and they're trying to figure out how to spend their hard-earned money, I love that job, helping spend other people's money. The first thing I say to them is you want to invest a minimal amount into a decent receiver, and then everything above that are your options. They're your features. What features do you want? Okay, so let's guide you over this way. I took the other approach with this, so I'll stay old school. And while Mark may hate the display on the 8800, the 8900, I'm absolutely in love with the radios, and I have 3 of them. Again, one in the truck, one in the Go Kit, and one here on my bench. The face-off form factor is nice. The ease and ability to throw it into crossband mode for me is key with the amount of work I do in public service events. It's old in it's long in the tooth. Once again, you find them on the used market, and they wear quite well. If I had to pick a current mode radio today, I'd be in D710 territory.
Okay. And one thing about those Yaesus you mentioned, that like the 8900 to 8800, they have function buttons. They have more function buttons than most, which is really really nice. I think that's one of the big selling points to those radios.
The big underrated feature on those radios is something called the quick memory buttons, and there's 6 buttons, 3 on each side, and they store the entire state of the radio. So I can program a memory channel in VFO-A, a memory channel in VFO-B. I can go back to the A side of the radio and set up my VFO the way I want it instead of in memory, and the VFO in channel B. I can then hit the function button, go to the crossband mode, come out of it, and then I press and hold one of those quick memory buttons, and it saves that entire state of the radio. Mm-hmm. So now when I'm out doing rally sport and I'm out in the field, I pre-program one of those buttons with the frequencies of the day, and I pre-program another one with the core frequency to the master repeater and a crossband if I'm out in the field, and I press one of the QMBs. I hit the function button. It comes up to memory option 4 or to menu option 44, and I'm in crossband mode just like that. That's a feature that doesn't exist anywhere else, which is why I'm so keen on those radios. But what about when it comes to handy talkies? So who wants to take that one on first?
Vince.
Yeah, Vince wants to take that one on first. Yeah. So Vince is an HT guy. Vince has only 4 HTs, and 2 of them are Yaesu VX7s because they're bulletproof. I can drive nails with it, and mostly they're waterproof. They're VX5 accessory compatible, which is where I started my ham radio life. The other kind of oddball radio I have to participate in LidNet is a Hytera Papa Delta 362. So this is a little skinny,
I love that radio,
5.5 ounce DMR radio that charges by a USB port. It's 1.5 watts. It's all the bells and whistles you'd expect a very basic DMR radio to be, but it's super tiny. It comes with a nice little belt clip. It's great. What's the LidNet, you ask? Thursday evenings at 21:30 Eastern Time on Talk Group 98003. There is nothing standard about the LidNet, but we obey all rules of the amateur radio service. The other radio besides the VX7 is the FT5, and I liked my FT3, except it was too quiet. So the enhanced audio on the FT5 is really quite nice. And I love it. So these are my 2 digital mode radios. My FT5 is everyday carry, along with a VX7 in my backpack. Those come with me everywhere. The Hytera sits here at home, and it's either on Talk Group 91 or 98003 or 31075 from time to time. Those are my go-tos these days. What about you, George?
Vince,
can I interrupt for a second?
Go ahead,
George,
Mike.
if you don't mind. The VX7 and the VX6, and mostly the VX5, I want to give you my glowing recommendation because I used to do a lot for sailing, either safety or running races. The number of times I have jumped off a boat in I won't quite say it's a rescue, but an assistance, because with the radio in my life jacket, knowing full well it's there, fresh and salt water, get back to the room in the hotel, rinse it off, and I still use that same radio today. So truly, not just like waterproof suggestion, truly waterproof, and I've time tested a bunch of them. So, George.
It's funny. You guys are zeroing in on a conclusion that I've been coming to, which is for if you put digital aside for the moment, Fusion, D-Star, DMR, and all that stuff, and just look at FM handy talkies, I think in a way, Yaesu's done the best job. I think they really have, because I've got I don't have any. Well, no, I have old Kenwoods. My favorite HT for many years was an THF6A, which is an awesome handy talkie. I still have it. It's a great radio, but I don't use it very much because there's no drop-in charger for it anyway. But I just don't use it. But for FM, I think the FT5 is a very nice radio. I like it quite a bit. Although for
Agreed.
going out to the field, back in my rugged radio, what's the equivalent of this in a Japanese handy talkie? Actually, I would go with the FT70, because the FT70 is
Hold on. You did it. What's
You
this?
did it. Yeah, I was
held
just
up-
noticing it. You held up
what's
a thing.
You held
Oh,
something.
did I?
This is an audio
I-
podcast, George.
That'll
thank
cost
you for pointing that out. So everybody, you guys have to understand, who you're listening to this, that I made a big stink about, like, since we're doing this video thing, that nobody is allowed to hold something up and say, "Ain't this great?" and then put it down, because everybody listening to the audio show is like, "What was that?" Right? So thank you appropriately pointed
Throw
that
a quid
out.
in the swear jar.
You've been schooled.
There's $5 in the swear jar.
Yep.
So
Dang
one thing I want to
Hold on.
What
He
was
still
it?
didn't say
Oh,
what
okay,
what
well,
was
explain
it?
explain
Let me
it,
finish-
George.
Let me finish
So
my
let's
point.
let's leave a gap and we'll start again.
No.
No, we're going to
No?
roll with this. So in the spirit of rugged radios, like the Lab 599
There we
TX
go.
500
Thank
solid aluminum case, I've been using an FT70, because when I look at the FT5, I think, ooh, expensive radio. Don't want to drop that in the dirt and step on it. I don't want to take one of these really crummy Chinese radios, not because I have anything against them, but I've been using an FT70, and I love the FT70. It's a very good performing radio. It's reasonably robust. I mean, it's a plastic case, but it's pretty beefy as plastic case radios go. The VFO knob is a pleasure to rotate. So if you like fidget spinners or other tactile gadgetry, that VFO knob on that radio is a
supple.
It's
pleasure to
very
rotate.
satisfying.
Oh,
yes.
It's very
But there-
satisfying.
But there's a
Which is-
swing and a miss with that VFO knob. And so let's come back to the FT3 and the FT5, which have stacked,
Yes.
very tactile, wonderful knobs that you can turn. And I'm holding them up on the video feed for people. And with the FT3 and the FT5, I can choose which of the two knobs is volume and which of the two is frequency changing. On the FT70, there is only one knob. And the one thing that drives me crazy about using that radio, and I've had people come into the candy store and say, "This drives me crazy," and it would drive me crazy too, is you have to press and hold a button on the side of the radio and turn the really nice tactile knob to adjust
Yes.
the volume. You can't remap that top button.
All of that is very
which
true.
is really unfortunate about it. But I agree with everything else you're saying. Guys, friends of mine who have them just love them to bits.
So here's
So-
my counter to that, and Mike's waving a
Mike is
an
rattling
Icom
around in the
Icom
background.
2AT. That was my
3AT.
first stage 3AT. Oh, so the 220 version.
380. Oh my.
And I have a 2AT too.
The 2AT was my first
Well,
radio.
of course you do.
That thing's
Yeah.
as old as I am.
So
you know why those things were so popular? Besides being the first really decent synthesized handy talkie on the market, they vaguely resembled a Motorola HT220.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
it's like, oh, you've got the
They
right
were-
exactly.
the right look.
1979 and $170 US for the 2AT.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because I remember
Yeah.
I had to pay my mom for it.
So this
So-
this raises a really important point and a commentary I want to make. Is we have at one end of the market space the Chinese radios that are less than satisfying from a quality perspective. They work and they're cheap. Awesome. Wonderful. At the other end, so that's a race to the bottom. On the other end of the spectrum, you have some major manufacturers, and I'm going to point out ICOM, and I'm going to point out Yaesu, that are racing to the top. And so now you're in the space of the D74 from Kenwood. You're in the space of a lot of the D-Star products, including the height of my frustration, the 52 product that seems to be shipping someday, maybe, at what is going to be a very high price.
Mm-hmm.
Bread and butter FM HTs or bread and butter digital HTs, there is a major market opportunity there for that type of just feels good, useful product. You know, for those of us that used to someday go to Dayton, you had an opportunity to, you know, maybe you're mostly an HF operator, but you dusted off your HT because that's what your wolf pack got together and started hunting for things. And Mike knows exactly what I'm talking about here with our crew, that you would hunt for certain things, but that's what you needed your HT for as you went around the flea market. That's all I want. I want something basic.
FT60 or FT70.
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right,
Those
but
are the radios that really fill that
Yeah.
niche, or something
Absolutely.
like the Anytone 878. But the problem with the Anytone is that the VFO is rubbish.
So,
And you can still find
plus you can't-
VX6 out there too.
Yeah.
But problem with a lot of like the Anytone is you can't really front panel program it.
Yeah.
It
That's
is
what I meant by
thoroughly
the VFO is rubbish. Yeah.
and I've really found that to be a real pain in the neck. As someone
is.
who's pretty comfortable with the programming software for DMR radios, I do find myself in the field going, oh, I don't have that frequency programmed.
Yeah.
So
The Anytone, you can program a channel, and there is actually a VFO you can get to, but it's not nearly as good as like the FT70 or
Yeah.
FT60. The FT50 was, like, for multiple decades, was the
Yeah.
go-to solid, indestructible, inexpensive starter dual band HT. When people, before the Baofangs became $25, when somebody got their ham license and they say, what radio should I get to start with? The answer was the FT50, period, full stop. Nobody questioned it. Nobody argued. And then once you got into it and got on the air and said, yes, I like this and I want to spend more money on it to get maybe a fancier radio, you could turn around and sell your FT50 to the next new guy for $20 less than you bought it for, or whatever it is, right? And then you can go upgrade your radio. The FT60 and the FT70 are kind of the spiritual successor to the FT50.
And I guess what I'm arguing is that there is something to be said for, if you look at George's latest Yaesu acquisition, for an on-screen keyboard that could be implemented very nicely so that you have that ability to easily program in the field, but don't have a lot of complication on the product itself. So I'll let it go at that. I think there's still a lot of room for innovation here, but I think it needs to be at the mid-range. So given that, man, have we beat this one?
I think
if
so.
you don't have some ideas about what to buy for a radio, you're on the wrong show, brother. It's
Just the only thing I'm going to beg when you go into your local candy store is please spend a minimum amount of money so that you do not end up with a front-end receiver that is big enough to fly a 747 through.
Yeah.
So when the
Beyond
sales guy
that,
says
it's all features.
When he says it's as broad as a barn door, listen to him.
Yeah. So I'm going to add one thing really quickly to the HTs. MD380, old,
yes,
the original DMR radio. And the reason I'm adding this to the list is because with some very simple hardware modifications and some software that isn't done being written yet, those will be the first HTs on M17.
Yes.
And so if you're interested in playing around with the brand new ham first style digital mode that's being developed, M17 is coming. It's actually under active development and it's looking really good. The MMDVM hotspots work with it now. The HT can transmit but not receive yet, or receive but not transmit. I can't remember which way it goes. And they're actively working on the other one. So
I'm interested in that. Let me know, because
yeah,
I still program this with the Pi. from the because I loved his updating system.
Yeah, well, you can
know,
you can already install OpenRTX on the MD380, and it has a real VFO and stuff. It's actually very feature light. OpenRTX is a replacement firmware for the MD380 and some other things.
OpenRTX. Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
All right.
So-
So let's go ahead and wrap this section. We're going to take a
Yep.
quick break and come back with part 3. We'll talk about accessories and other non-radio goodies for the ham. We'll be right back.
We might be able to spin off a whole show on this section, judging by the Holy Trinity comments in the show notes.
Mark, that's my only DMR radio.
Yeah, it'll
Okay,
still work for DMR when it's done.
I'll take a break. I'll shut my video off for a moment.
So Mike, I have a new product for you. There's this bag that hangs on the back of a door that we use for the hockey teams, and it's so all the girls can put their cell phones into it. There's a little pouches about this big.
Oh,
so
like
they
the shoe
hang-
bag?
It's
Yeah.
like a shoe bag except for phones, but it's also the perfect size for HTs. So I'm thinking about hanging one on the back of my workshop just for the slew
sounds
of
like-
HTs that made their way in.
I had
Sounds like you're going into a. Go ahead.
I had 9 HTs in that Tupperware container I got going, George.
Sounds like you're going into a skiff. You got to drop your phone in the bag so you can't
Yeah.
go into the room with your
Exactly.
gear.
Exactly.
All right. How's your bladders?
Should we take a break
I'm
or
good,
just keep
but
going?
I think we're good.
Thanks, Raker,
except,
for that.
except Vince has turned into a not here.
He said he was gonna had to be back. So
Okay.
We can go without him.
Okay.
screw that
So
guy.
When was the last time we had a screwdriver episode?
Kyle, tell your wife that what you're about to buy will broaden your international exposure. It's cultural, Why not?
But buying German screwdrivers?
Yeah, exactly. He said his wife walked in and just shook her head.
I'm
Oh,
shaking
yeah.
my head. I'm
'Cause
totally
she
on
thought
the
she-
opposite end of the spectrum as you guys. I buy the cheap
'Cause she
screwdrivers and consider them to be consumables.
She probably thought he was watching porn and saw us.
That's got to be. Ooh.
And probably thought, man, don't you have better taste?
Wow, that escalated quickly.
All right.
Nasty.
Let's go ahead and we'll roll into part 3. And that's the long one, so to speak.
We'll be quick.
2
Sure,
hours
Mark.
in.
All right, here we go. All right. We're going to come back in 5, 4, 3. Okay, so now it's time for the shopping show to really get into high gear and talk about a bunch of non-radio stuff or radio accessories, just not the main thing being the radio. So who wants to kick it off? Let's see. How
I'm going to
about
kick it off this first time
Mark?
because I've got the fewest number of things on this list. So I'll get mine done quickly. I think the best thing that you could buy the ham that you love in your life or put on your request list, your ask list for Santa to bring you is a box of ferrites that you actually know what they are. Not mystery ferrites, but like
you don't mean the
known
fuzzy little
ferrites.
long animal. You mean not this
Not
clear,
ferrets,
not a ferret. Ferret.
ferrites.
All right, just want to make sure.
FT240-43s, clamp-ons, things like that. I've got a couple of links that we'll
31s.
include in the show notes here to some Ferrite brand, but any brand will do fine. 43 mix or 31 mix, FT240-43 toroids, or some of the big heavy clamp-ons. Go watch the video on my YouTube channel about measuring ballons to see to learn a little bit about common mode current chokes, why you want them, how to build them, which ones I found that I liked that worked really well, and I show the data on how well they worked and all that fun stuff. So if you want to learn more about that, I got a video on my YouTube channel, Smitty Halibut, YouTube/Smitty Halibut. But yeah, get yourself
That's a really good suggestion,
a
and
box.
that's the sort of thing you'll never have enough. So,
yes, just
yeah.
stock up. Because anytime you find a noise source like, oh, those lights create noise, grab the power cord, wrap it around a toroid, and noise goes away.
In fact, when you ask the question, do you get the big round one or the little round one or the snap-on one? The answer is yes.
Yes,
Yes.
all of them.
Just get a few of all of them because
Yeah.
you never know what you're going to find that you need
Yeah.
to choke.
So the only other thing that I had on this list of what's the category we're calling it? Accessories and other non-radio gear. The other thing that I added to this list is the Morse Reno 32 or the Morse Tutor or something like that. If this 2022 is going to be the year that you learn Morse code, right? Of course it is, because we all say that every January 1st. Well, go grab yourself a Morse Reno 32. Or I'm sorry, I keep listing the Morse Tutor first. I want to list the Morse Tutor first because they're made by friends of the show, Vince.
So that's a really good suggestion. I think those are great gifts because they're under $100.
Yep.
Hey Vince, how much is the CW kit thing that you guys are doing?
I want to say 67 Kanakistani dollars. I want to say that was the last price.
Like $2.50 American.
Yeah, about the price of a 6-pack of Budweiser at the local Target store. So a little bit more.
6-pack of what?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Drink Budweiser.
That a slap after I made that crack about the real Thanksgiving? Is that how you're getting back at us?
It pretty much is. Yeah, that's how you translate that.
Cool.
Who
All right,
says
Rod?
Canadians are polite?
I think I just discovered a new segment for our show. What's in your fridge? Because mine's Budweiser and Coors Banquet.
Oh my God, Vince!
There you
I'm
go.
so disappointed.
Anyway, coming back to the topic, about 67 Canadian dollars, and we're taking wait list right now for those. Thanks for the plug, Mark.
Yeah.
The Morse Reno is a phenomenal product with great features to it. They complement each other quite nicely. I of course have one of each on my desk.
Yeah.
And like everybody else, I'm still learning Morse code.
So 2022, man, it's the year of Morse code.
Yep.
Just
it
like
is.
2021 was, and 2020 before that. 2022 will be the year that we all learn Morse code.
You know what my year of Morse code was?
19.
Back in the
04?
dawn of time with spark gaps.
Oh, shut up!
It hasn't happened
actually,
yet?
It does go. Yes, it has happened. It happened a long time ago. In fact, so long ago I can't even remember.
My year of Morse code was 2003. Did I ever tell you what my first key was? No, I didn't.
Why? When I was a kid,
but
we
hey,
had a rusty
geez,
nail.
Vince, what was
If
your
you-
first key?
If you go onto my QRZ.com page, you will see this key that I am holding up. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is a knockoff joystick from the Hayes clone days, from the Apple and Atari days that I rewired for paddle. And so I brought this
Do you go like-
into
do you
the
go like-
examiner's home. No, it's just press the buttons. I had to do it at 5 words a minute. How
So
hard
I'm
was
waving
this?
my hand back and forth on the joystick for you
Yeah.
Wow.
And I brought it into my friend Barry's house, V6 Tango November, and he says, "You can't be serious." Well, yes, I can, Barry. Well, he
And
tries
don't
to
call
put a
me
straight key
serious.
in front of me.
Don't-
Well, that didn't work. He tries to put a Bencher BY2 in front of me. I couldn't use them. And he says, "Well, you can't do it on that." And I said, "Barry, you and I know bloody well that if I stand up at the door to this room and turn the light switch on and off in the correct cadence, I'm demonstrating proficiency," which is exactly what the Canadian test does for. He says, "Okay, you can do it." Yeah, that's what I did mine. But I got
I
us
wanna
way
know,
down a
is-
rat hole.
Vince, is that thing iambic?
Yes, it is. It is.
Is it
There's two
weighted like a
buttons on it.
bug?
Yes, it is, as a matter of fact, but it doesn't have magnetic return
Yep.
like my Begali
I'd be
Traveler.
surprised if it had any return.
So, yeah, from the chat room, John Jacob says, "Can you wrap those ferrites around the neighbor's dog that keeps making noise?" Alas, no. That is, unless it is K9 from Doctor Who, that's the wrong kind of noise.
But I'm glad
Yep.
he brought that up. I have the same problem.
Yeah, just-
So I brought us down the joystick rat hole. How do I bring us back out again?
Yeah. So
All right.
So I want to check with Rod to see what was the first thing you had on your stocking stuff or
So-
non-radio list.
So only through absolute demand from the group, I'm going to talk about.
From where?
You know what I'm going to talk about mostly.
Here we
It's
go.
going to be the Holy Trinity, the German Holy Trinity of screwdrivers and pliers. The Nipix,
There's no
the
getting away from
Wehas,
it.
the Warehas. Well, you're not going to get away. And there's been innovation this year, my friends. There's been innovation in the Hardman toolkit because in
You got it
past
slotted.
times,
Phillips
past
has been
times,
updated.
I'm holding up here a Weira drive lock screwdriver, and I do have all this linked in the show notes, so worry not, listeners. But the problem with this is fairly expensive. They are a 1/4 inch, but they use these little bubble things, and it allows you to extract it to have a really short screwdriver, a very long screwdriver,
He's
whatever
talking
bit
about
you
the
want.
shaft.
Yeah, the
Yes.
shaft moves in and out of the handle, so it could be a long screwdriver or a short screwdriver. And the bubble thing is the little
The thing that locks it
locks
into
it in
it, that it
place, yeah.
holds
The
on to.
knurled nut.
Yes.
How
Very
do you-
nice stuff.
Hey, Rod, how do you update the firmware in that thing?
Right
You have to
here,
be
it's
a Cana-
wetware, brother. It's wetware.
You have to be at Canadian
The
Tire
question
at 8
still
when they
holds.
open on a Saturday.
Exactly.
So, what brand is that you are wagging at us?
So that was what we call a WIHA, WIHA, and it's a drive lock. And what makes it, they're incredibly comfortable. You have to go find someplace that sells these things and just pick them up and play with them for a while, because they fit beautifully in your hand. And once you have one of these things, you will never let it go. German screwdrivers, yes. But here's the innovation this week, folks. Yes, the problem is getting our beloved Robertson drivers, and they are available from WIHA. They're just a little harder to get. But the standard 1/4 inch, well, now WIHA's now got a standard 1/4 inch locking bit. So now that's not going to come out. You place it in, it's a collar that actually locks in place. It means you can carry around one handle, a very small set of bits, and be covered across the whole gambit of things. Yes,
Gotcha.
This is my screwdriver obsession, folks. You knew it was going to have to be, a conversation, and we've had it. But this is where you will be able to go down the rat hole. I've even provided links to Amazon on here. Not saying that Amazon's the best deal on these things. You can look all over the place. There's all sorts of great retailers for these. But that is my introductory salvo into the world of screwdrivers, and you knew we could do that.
So now I know how people feel when I go on and on about Metcal. Thank you for educating me.
It is
I was-
the Metcal
was-
of handheld tools. Yes,
I was
George.
embarrassed that I only learned that the Japanese Phillips equivalent screwdrivers are not at the same pitch
No,
Mhm.
that American ones are. I just
Posidrive.
thought that they were lousy screws.
no,
Turns out I just didn't have the right screwdriver.
correct.
And even the beloved slot screwdriver has incredible variants. Yes, friends, hour 3 of the Workbench, and we're talking about slot screwdrivers now. But
As
We'll
one
have
of the-
to ask Doug Millar when he comes on to do connectors about the pitch difference in the threads for a PL259 between Japan and North America. There is a slight difference.
Yeah, well, they're
We'll have to
totally
remember to do
different.
that.
Oh, totally. They're different standards, right? Phillips is a standard, and Posidrive is the standard that they use more often in Japan. And so, if you
okay.
look at your screw head,
Yep.
right? So I'm holding my it's a circular screw head, and it's got the cross that makes you think that it is a Phillips head screwdriver. If you see little score marks coming out at the 45s between the part where the screwdriver goes, if you see those little score marks at the 45, it's a Posidrive, not a Phillips. You can get separate tools, separate heads for bits for your screwdriver that are Posidrive, and if to tell the difference on the bit, the Phillips heads just have the the cross membered triangular part that comes down to a point. The Posidrive ones are the ones that have like the thing that's in the concave section of that cross. They have kind of a ramp up of a triangular thing, and I'm not describing this well, but you can take a look at the screw bits, and the bits are very different. I'll see if I can find some pictures and put them in the show notes.
you know who learned all this really fast was anybody that bought an ICOM 9700 and was trying to do the GPS mod to it because they couldn't get it apart without the other bits.
So
You know how I found out about it? Owning a Japanese motorcycle.
Rod, what's that in
What do
your
you got?
hand?
What's
So-
that, Rod?
One more. Since we're talking about screwdrivers, there was the incredibly manual screwdriver. And oh, yeah, everybody can think, I've got my DeWalt drill. I can do anything with it. When you're working with electronics, case assembly, that kind of thing, I used to a long time ago in a galaxy very far away. I ran a configuration center for PCs where we would like drop modem cards in and that kind of thing. And one of the things that I, for a while, banned power screwdrivers until I found a really nice, what do you call that, clutch version of a power screwdriver on there. Well, my version now is the Bosch 12-volt line, because now don't get the, what do you call the power screwdriver, or the ones that drive bolts in, that kind of thing. But there is a screwdriver version
Hammer
of the
drill.
Bosch. It's not a hammer drill.
Yeah.
The jackhammer.
Yeah, basically. The 12-volt line, little teeny tiny battery on this sucker. Okay. And I used to mock these things because I wanted the big DeWalt batteries, right? But since I've switched over, first off, there's been a big change in motor technologies with these. And now these little teeny tiny 12-volt batteries do a wonderful, wonderful job. And you can get a whole variety of products to go with it. So ranging all the way from, gosh, sorry, I had this all written down here. Clutch drives, baby reciprocating saws, jigsaws. So now you can get one common battery thing. Even one of my new favorite tools, the oscillating saw, which just protrudes out the front and will cut almost anything. It's great when you're assembling cases or you're trying to drill through cases. And when you're done with all this, since we do have video, but this will be for our audio folks. Yep. A little tiny vacuum to clean up with the same batteries. Boy, that drove people's ears nuts. But wow, wonderful stuff. Great filtering on this, the whole 9 yards. I have got the entire list of the 12-volt line in there. They're pretty cheap. They usually come with batteries, but you can also buy them bare. So with once you've got like 2 or 3 of these batteries, it's really all you need. So folks, Bosch makes a wonderful line. It counts as a German tool. And
fine German engineering.
So fine German engineering. But I love these things. They're really well constructed. I haven't broken one yet. I can't seem to, no matter how many times I drop it off a ladder. And they're good around the house too. So you don't have to have great, big, huge power tools unless that's one of your things. Okay.
That's a good suggestion. Yeah. So I feel complete now that we've covered screwdrivers and DMR. So I think it's downhill from here, boys.
It's got to be.
Let's see, Mike. What's on your list of stocking stuffer accessories?
You know how we've been focusing, Dan Quigley, N7HQ, and myself been focusing about LAN and the Ham Shack, and we've got a number of videos out there if you want to see them, especially in the QSO Today Expo. So as we found, some people have noisy switches, and I've been finding that most of the noisy network switches have been somewhat related because they've been it's like, remember what it was like to buy a cordless phone forever ago? You'd walk in and, do I buy the $27 one or the $127 one? We used to think that you got better for more money, but long since learned that that's not true. But anyway, as switches go, we've been focusing on switches in metal cases, and generally they've been built better. Sort of, the old school of us that want it to feel heavy and work. And yeah, we've noticed they're a bit RF quieter. So I've been liking the TP-Link ones, and they're still under $100. They make a prosumer one or a home office one, and I think they come with like a lifetime warranty. So these are 5 years, and this is in Canada, Rod, or lifetime. I actually had one die. Fortunately, the office is near me in Markham. They swapped it out in 2 days. They said, drop it in. New one showed up at the door in the middle of COVID. They just replaced it. No questions asked. Keep the receipt. So that's my, in keeping, time-wise, my big stocking stuffer, whatever that is. Stocking stuffer.
That sounds like a good tip. So I've got one that I think is a universally great present, because most of us never buy it for ourselves because it seems a little expensive. And that's actually the ARRL handbook, because the book is about $50. So you can get it as a papery book, like a book, like they used to make, or you can get it as like a collection of CDs. So you get the electronic, PDF or whatever it is version, and you could look at it on your computer or laptop, tablet, whatever. So yeah, and there's a lot of great books, like the antenna book. Mike was just pointing out the antenna book. That would be my second pick. I would, the first one I would start with is the handbook, because the handbook has the kind of some knowledge of amateur radio in every dimension.
Yeah.
And since the book's like $50 or $60, it's one of those things where it's like, if it was $19.95, I'd get one, but it's like $60, and I don't know. But that's why it makes a great present. The best presents are the ones you kind of would like to have, but you just don't ever get for yourself.
That's a great idea. I got about 10 of them here.
Well,
Yeah,
and
the new
go
ones
ahead.
come out in multiple volumes.
The new paper. I mean, the new printed ones.
Yeah,
Are
so
multiple
instead of
ones?
one big thick book, it's like 6 thinner books.
Oh,
And
well, I know the CD collection is like a half a dozen CDs if you go that route.
Well,
Yeah,
the
the great
thing
part
is,
about
though, that physics doesn't change much, and
No, it
you
doesn't.
can pick up like this 1965 edition for $5 at a flea market, and you'll have a lot of the same information in it. Now, the handbooks are really good. They're curated for the time. And if you need to step back in time and see what hollow state devices were doing and what your ideas were for that, this is, an older book is great. Antennas don't change much, although some of the slot antenna designs won't be there. There's Mike holding up his 1976 version of the
So what's the
65
oldest
that
one
I
we've
was
seen?
holding up.
65 is the one you've got? Let me see which one I've got. Hang on.
I have to find a 62, the year I was born. I found one as a birthday gift for my brother. I found one in the year he was born. He thought that was pretty cool.
Signed by
That's
Hiram
fun.
Percy Maxim himself.
Just
So I
about.
found a piece of paper in this one. It was the BOM, handwritten on a piece of paper, on how to build the AccuKeyer.
Oh, no kidding.
Because I think every one of us built one or wanted to, right?
Yes.
And what a great project to learn about solid state devices.
Was the AccuKeyer
74
in that particular issue? I know it was
It
in
was.
QSP around 1972.
7400, 7474,
Yes.
7410s.
That was the
Yeah.
first digital anything that I learned a ton from that. That was the first digital thing I ever built. Yep.
So
what's-
speaking of older copies of the handbook too, one of the great things about the handbook, you don't buy it every year, you buy it every few years, is that it's the gift that literally keeps giving, because you take your older handbooks and give them to some
Give
younger
them to
hands.
somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they still cover off all the great basics, but you get to have the latest and greatest version or whatever. So it's a lovely regift.
So one of the best things about the handbook is it also makes a fabulous bathroom read. What I mean by that is you can pick virtually any topic, and in like 5 minutes, it's like, oh, that's what a voltage regulator does, or oh, that's what a quad antenna is. And everything is very bite-sized, and you could just or you could just go, well, I got nothing to do for the next 20 minutes. I'm going to randomly flip the pages and stick my finger in the book and see where it lands and read about whatever.
Yeah, that's a really good point, George. You don't end up, this is not a book you read end to end. You grab a section, and maybe you've had a bad day at work. I don't know, whatever. Or you need something for your lunch hour to get you away. Down that we're all working from home and whatever. Just go grab a very small section of the handbook, and it completely refreshes your brain.
So I inherited 3 ARRL handbooks, a 1959, a 1960, and a 1961 from my dad, and who passed away almost exactly a year ago. And I was just flipping through the 1959. 1959, he was... I don't think he was in the Army yet. No, maybe he'd just gotten out of the Army, which means he was probably at school, because he was born in 1937, so he would have been 22. And he wasn't a ham until the 90s, but he owned this book, and I just was rifling through the pages, and I pulled out these 2 pieces of college rule lined paper that have some mathematical drawings and a little schematic drawing of a tube amplifier circuit
Triode.
with a triode and a bunch of resistors and capacitors and whatnot, and that's my dad's handwriting.
Oh, wow.
And so I literally, just because we were dick fencing about who had the oldest ham radio amateur, the handbook, I went and pulled this off the bookshelf and rifled through it and found this little bit of history from my dad.
That's awesome.
Who, like
That's
I
great.
said, we lost a year ago in 2 days. So thank you for
That's
making
very
me,
cool.
quote unquote, making me get up and go get the handbooks off the shelf.
It's cool.
Yeah, you
That's
wish
pretty
you
cool,
you
Mike.
had the opportunity to understand, what was he thinking about when he was looking at that project? Was he
Yeah.
thinking about how does it work, or maybe I should build this thing, or
Yeah, he wasn't a
Yeah.
ham. I know he knew about amateur radio because he's the one who first told me about amateur radio, but he said he never got his license. And then when I was in high school, I got my license. My first call sign was KD6SOJ, and then he's like, "Well, crap. If my son's got his license, I've got to go get my license." Because the thing that always stopped him was the Morse code. He was tone deaf and rhythm deaf like nobody. Like the guy had no musical sense whatsoever, and so he was completely incapable of learning Morse code. And so that always stopped him. But of course, in the late 80s, early 90s, the code requirements went away. I got my license, I think, in 91, might have been 92, somewhere in there. And once I got my license, he was kind of, quote unquote, forced into it because now his son's got it. He can't not have it. So he went out and got his, and he was KD6SOJ. So I was KD6JTS, and he was SOJ. So anyway.
Nice.
Just
That's
thought I'd
very
share
cool.
that little bit with you guys. Thank you.
Something else that along those lines that might also be cool. I don't know if they still publish them, but the ARRL published decades of QST on CD. So you can go by like 1950 to 1959 or 1940 to 1940 or something like that. Maybe they had 2 decades in a row or whatever. So if you want to learn a little bit about the history of ham radio, it's really fun to go back and look at old QST magazines to look at who the vendors were, who were the manufacturers, what did the radios look like, what were people excited about, what was like the big deal at the time. And if you could find the old paper copies, which are still around, that's one source. But I think they still publish these things electronically. So that might be, that's another thing like you probably wouldn't buy for yourself, but would make for a cool gift. Oh, by the way, speaking of books, one last, go ahead, Mark.
I was
Mark-
going to add to that Sprat.
Yes.
The GQRP Club, they just released a DVD that has every Sprat in history in a single DVD. And I think it was like 20 quid. I mean,
Oh,
it
wow.
was well worth the money. That was absolutely a shut up and take my money moment. So I wanted to add that one to the list as well. Mike, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say to interrupt George's story, but
by all means,
if you're
go
looking for, well, we're used to it, because we talk a lot about radios and we do talk about antennas. ARL published a great series called the Antenna Compendium series. I think there's 5 books. Find every one of them, and great leafing through it, just to get an idea and go, that might fit in my yard. And if they've published it, it's a performing antenna. So hey, George, back to you.
Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion. I think, books are, or CDs of book material are fantastic gifts because they're not terribly expensive, but the value of what you get, the knowledge that you get out of them is worth, way more than what you pay for it. We buy a lot of junk we use once and then put in the corner, but that you'll use for your whole ham career. One other book that's really good is our friend Bill Mara from the Solder Smoke podcast. He's got a book called Solder Smoke Global Adventures in Amateur Radio, I think is the title.
It's
And
Great
it's-
book.
It's
Amazing.
it's essentially his personal journey of well, actually working as a professional diplomat in the, for the State Department, coupled with his exploration and learning about radio, and all kind of intertwined. So it's sort of personal story and electronics, and it's really, really fun to read it. And so Bill's such an inspiration for us doing podcasting, and he really can tell a story. So that's a great book. And another one too, we did our interview with Grayson Evans, the Hollow State Design book, another really great pick. So the list of books is pretty long, but those are all really real winners.
So Eugene Ma wins the oldest ARRL handbook collection with 1944. My oldest is 1959. But
very good.
Eugene claims to have a 1944, and I have no reason not to believe. So we'll go with that.
So, by the way, what's so fun about looking at those old books is, especially when you look at stuff like antennas, and like now things like NFEDs are all the rage, and you find out like, well, in 1949 they were old hat. I mean, all this stuff is,
everything old is stuff. New again.
Absolutely. All right. Let's see. Anything else before we kind of wrap up here? Are there any must-haves we've missed?
Yes, Vince? We have missed the humble 35 millimeter film canister, and I'm holding up the same one. What?
You called that last year?
Yes, because
you have to wait 3 years.
You can still buy these. You can buy them in a 5-pack off Amazon. They're not expensive. And what do I do with it? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I feed my solder out of it in my field kit. I wish I had more of these, so maybe Santa Claus will find a way to get some in my stocking this year.
To be clear, he's not talking about the black canister with the gray pop-off lid that you put the
Mark.
Film in. This is the literal 35 millimeter canister, the thing that you would slide the film out of. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Rod is holding something up. What is Rod holding up?
Because you couldn't get enough screwdrivers, folks. This is the screwdriver ratchet. Okay, again by Weehaw. It's becoming a running gag. But if you look in the show notes, there's something called the Weehaw Tool Check Plus, and this thing is the cutest little ratchet ever. So I have two more things, like just this, and it does a beautiful job, and it uses the very same system, and it makes a very satisfying sound too. But it's a lovely thing. And one last thing while I'm here. For those of you that have got to measure elements on or anything in ham radio that's like longer than a couple of inches, it's longer than a 12-inch ruler. The idea of a folding ruler is a wonderful, wonderful thing, right? And again, my friends, I feel like I'm not sponsored by Weehaw. Really, I'm not.
My grandfather had one of these.
Yeah, my dad did. They're the old carpenter's rulers.
They're the old carpenter's rulers, but this one for Canadian content is both inches and metric. And they are, and by the way, it's insulated too. I guess I could poke an electrical circuit with this or something and it'd be just fine. But when you got 2 meters of available, just lay it on the bench and not have to hold it down like a tape measure, like a animal, then that is a wonderful thing. And so I highly recommend it. Have one of these in your toolkit as well as a tape measure, because sometimes you got longer elements to measure. Yep. But it's a wonderful thing when you're working solo to have one of these.
I'm going to go real quick with 3 things that I put down in the list. I'm going to talk about the Keyspan 19HS, the Keyspan 19 Hotel Sierra. It is a USB to serial interface. It works with all operating systems. And it's hard to find a computer anymore with a real serial port. This will give you one should you need that in the field. It's worth every penny you pay for it. It's about 42 Canadian dollars, about 35 US.
Vince, what's the chipset in it?
It's one that works. I don't know.
Is it prolific or FIDI?
I believe it's prolific.
Okay.
I don't know that. It works with everything though. It's awesome. The next thing I put in the show notes is an RF universal adapter kit. And you can get these as inexpensively as $70 and as expensively as $500. You get what you pay for. If you just need to casually create some adapters for a little bit of work or to get through an event, something you don't carry in your kit. These little, these kind of from any to any sort of kits are wonderful things. I gave one as a gift to my brother last year. And the last thing I'll put on my list is the American Morse Products dirt sheet paddle, or the Traveler paddle. This one that I'm displaying on video, and Mike's holding one up. This one comes as a kit. You can scratch build it. And so this is my portable key. It is not magnetic. It's got a nice spring return on it. It's got a decent feel to it, and you can adjust it so that it's nice and tight. So those are quick stocking stuffer things.
You know what? This one feels, I hate to say it, and I'm not a CW operator by any means, but I send better than with this one than my Bengali. With the
that's blasphemy, my friend.
Porta Paddle 2 kit comes from California. It's got some small screws in it.
Yep.
So put it together in a baking tray so that you can
yes.
find them when you drop it. But
yes,
it's a
or you'll
really
be putting
nice
money
key.
in the swear jar.
I have a safety tip for you guys. If you're going to use those paddles in the field, get yourself an extra set of springs and put them in a Ziploc bag in your take along kit.
Speaking of experience, maybe?
I don't know. Just saying. You know, that sort of stuff can happen.
All right, so that's
Seriously.
my quick 3 stocking stuffer ideas.
Very good.
I've got one I would
Mark.
like to mention. I go on and on and on and on about the Metcal soldering iron. You guys are sick and tired of hearing me talk about the Metcal.
Oh, so this is a stocking
Tell
stuffer
us
then.
about the
Okay.
Metcal iron, Mark.
So Metcal, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but their patent ran out several years ago, and a company called Thermaltronics has been using the same technology and making compatible devices. When I say compatible, I mean they use the same tips. You can take Thermaltronic tips and put them on a Metcal and vice versa. In fact, I have not been buying Metcal tips for my Metcal. I've been buying Thermaltronics tips for my Metcal for the last several years. But I just went and looked at it earlier in a Twitter discussion about a week ago, and Thermaltronics also makes the full station. So if you don't want to go onto eBay and buy a used Metcal, you can get a used Metcal in working condition for on the order of $100 to $200. Thermaltronics sells their TMT 9000S, which is the base, which the base unit, which has all the RF generation in it, the wand, the stand, and some tips and all of the things. It's a full soldering station for $400, which sounds like a lot when you're comparing it against a Hacko 888, which is only $100. But that is a heck of a lot cheaper than the same thing you get from Metcal, which is probably going to be closer to $1,000 or more. But the $400 for that Thermaltronics is actually a very good price for that quality, for a brand new that quality of soldering iron using that same technology. And really, the business end of the soldering iron is the tip, and those tips are the same. They're the ones that I use on my Metcal.
So briefly tell us what is it about that category of soldering iron that makes it different than just a regular soldering iron?
It's like soldering with butter. So
It has
Be more
presence.
technically accurate.
It has presence.
Is it supple?
It has presence.
It is supple, has presence, and is like butter. So the technology, there's a term for it, and I can't remember it, but it relies on the Curie temperature of a particular material. So as the material heats up, the magnetic properties of it change, and that changes the way it couples to the feed line coming down into the tip. So the generator generates RF, and it can generate a lot of RF. And rather than having a thermostat that turns on and off a heating element, like the tip, like the physics of the tip wants to be at a very specific temperature. And so it'll send as much energy down there as it needs to. And there's very little thermal mass at the tip. So as you start heating something and it cools down the tip, the thing reheats incredibly quickly, and it's able to send a whole lot of power down there. And so the same tip doesn't have to be super hot to be able to generate a lot of power. It can deliver a lot of power and not be too hot. And the way the physics work, and I'm not going to be able to do it quickly
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
but
I'm not concerned about like how does it work
Yeah.
physics wise. It's more like I don't have one, so
Yeah.
this is just like hearsay. But
Clearly, you need one.
well, yeah, I'm not complete without having one.
So
The tip is cool, and when you solder, it heats up really quick, and then when you're done soldering, it cools down again. I mean, that's the sort of the observation that I have made.
Well,
That's all I know.
it doesn't cool down again. It stays at the same temperature, but you're delivering less power to it because it's not having heat drawn away from it.
Okay.
Right.
I thought
So the ability
my-
to deliver a lot of heat a lot of energy very quickly means that as soon as you start using the tip, it doesn't cool down, and then the thermostat turns on and it has to heat the thing back up again. Right? Like it's able to deliver 100 watts or whatever it is instantaneously. And so the tip never changes temperature. It always stays that same temperature.
So it's acceleration. Randy's saying here it's fast response, the Lamborghini of soldering irons.
Yeah, except
I
with
thought
better cornering
Didn't
capabilities.
Weller make one? Because I thought I had a Weller one. The WBT, the 5-letter name, did the same thing. It was a magnetic-driven tip.
It might.
And,
I really wish I could remember
okay.
the name of the technology. I read a PDF somewhere that had a description
Interesting.
of exactly how the stuff worked. I'll see if I can find it. I keep saying that, and I've never been able to find it again.
Sounds like a good QSO Today talk, actually. Seriously.
Yeah, we'll get Eric on that.
Yeah. Isn't he going to have another one of those things in the next?
March 13th and 14th.
Yeah, so he's doing 2 a year, right?
Yeah, he's actually got a brand new cool interface. We had a demo on it.
Yeah.
And to be serious for a second, since you brought it up, it's such a cool room. I hope he uses it, but it'll actually be more like actually going to a ham fest, except virtually. And instead of like just what we do now in the Zoom, it's way beyond that. The guys have done some cool stuff on it. I can't say anything more.
Oh,
than
good.
that.
Great to hear. I
it's
really
coming in
enjoyed the
March.
experience last time.
What's that?
It's coming in March.
George? March 13th and 14th, or I think it's the 13th, to Saturday, something like that.
Well,
Well-
we did our lounge at the last one, and that was really fun. I had a great time
Yes.
just hanging out in the lounge. I didn't really go see hardly any talks. I figured I'd watch the talks the next couple of weeks after the thing's over. So I just hung around in the lounge most of the weekend.
And when's Baynet happening?
Baynet is early February, and let's see, pulling up the calendar now. It is going to be February the 5th. And
Oh. I could go there after the NHL All-Star game.
are you
There
going to be
you
in
go.
San Jose?
It's in Vegas. I'm close
Oh,
enough.
well,
How
you'll
far?
be the only one there because it's going to be virtual. So,
Oh, really? Forget it.
Drop in, Mike. We'll be happy to see you.
yeah, we'll see you there.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that story. Last time I dropped in, nobody showed up.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just bad. It was a bad
insufficient
weekend.
planning. It sort of boils down to. All right. Anything else on our stocking stuffer list of things we would recommend? Yeah, there's always more stuff.
Wow, that hearing only the sounds of crickets.
Yeah, that never happens here. All right. Well, I think we've kind of done it. Just before we wrap up, are there any other suggestions from the Peanut Gallery of people who are actually watching the live stream? Both of them.
The 44 people that don't have anything better to do tonight.
So it looks quiet in the chat. There's been a lot of chat.
And
All right.
and thanks for folks for showing up, because we have not widely publicized this. We put it in our Twitter feeds and that kind of thing. And it's really great to have an audience out there and getting people responding.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I think with that we're going to go ahead and wrap it. I think we've hit the limit on the show time. So I really want to thank everybody for tuning in and watching the live stream. And for those of you who didn't, you'll enjoy the somewhat more professional edited version of the show. And we got a bunch of great shows coming up in the next couple of months. And we also still have our DC Power Strip kits. We've got a bunch of them all bagged up, and they're just ready to get shipped off to the distribution facility. We've kind of signed all the contracts. We're in the final logistics planning now and making labels and stuff like that to manage through their inventory system. So as soon as that happens, that they will be off and available for sale. I'm hoping that will happen in mid-December. That would have been my number one suggestion for a Christmas present. That and a Pactena. Let's get that in while we can. But seriously, the DC Power Strip would make an awesome stocking stuffer if they were only available. So who knows? Maybe at the last minute before Christmas, they'll show up if we get that all squared away. Anyway, with that, I want to thank you guys so much for joining tonight on the show, and all of you listeners and watchers. It's been great to have you here. So let's see, Mark, why don't we go and do our last round through the team here, and you could let us know if people want to find you. How could they do that?
Yeah, best place to find me is on Twitter, SMITTYHALIBUT. I'm also on YouTube, but I haven't posted any videos there lately. I might start doing things again soon. As I work on non-Secret Squirrel kinds of projects, I'll probably start live streaming some of that stuff. Vince, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at VE6Lima Kilo or www.ve6lk.com. Mr. Rod.
Find me on Twitter at Victor Alpha 3 Oscar November. And also the Cycle 25 site, www.cycle25.ca.
And Mike?
And Mike?
What's this Twitter thing again? George, you do this thing?
I don't do that
Anyway.
stuff.
I actually have been paying attention to Smitty, at least. I've been posting a ton. I've been trying to stay on the two DMR talk channels. So either ours for Ham Radio Workbench, which is 31075, or the Flex Radio one at 30234. Email's always good at my QRZ address, although it's not in the email field. So you got to read the body of the text to find my email, which is just my call sign. And over to you, George.
All right, very good. And if you're looking for me, you could find me either on DMR Talk Group 31075 or now on All-Star 55915. And hopefully we'll get those things connected and bridge them all together. And otherwise, I'll be on 40CW with my Lab 599. So with that, from all of us at the Ham Radio Workbench, 73.
73.
73.
Good humans, everyone.
All right.
And thanks
it.
for distracting me from buying car parts, Thomas. You are welcome.
You did
Excuse
hit
me.
record, right?
What?
Oh,
Is that what that big button's for? I've been wondering what that flashing light was.
dude, that's the closest we've ever come. It really is.
That was the one time when the joke was really not a joke, when it was
Yeah.
really the truth. Like
When you
oh my
looked
God.
over, I saw the look
I
on
could
your
tell.
face. I knew exactly what had happened.
Yeah.
I'm just glad it was 10 minutes in, not like 2 hours and 10 minutes in.
Oh, did you guys actually do that this time around?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we were like 10 minutes or whatever,
Live.
5 or 10 minutes into it, and I like glanced over at the mixing board and like
It's not
light
recording.
wasn't on.
Ah, shit.
Exactly.
And we still
Welcome.
are live on YouTube, by the way.
Yeah. Ham Radio Workbench after dark.
After dark. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we
Now the
go.
real show starts.
Ah,
Yeah.
boy.
What do you really think about that radio?
You know what? I haven't used my Bofang in forever, and the battery's still 3/4 charged.
Yeah, well, you'll never
I
use the
didn't-
rest of it.
Even get to talk about my crazy wire stripper from Nipex.
Now,
See,
see
I
that?
Now,
I might
in the
buy
show
that.
notes.
now let's go back to this. I wasn't here last year for the shopping show. I mentioned
you've
this in
pitched
the
that before.
$250 toolkit.
Oh.
This is
It was
still
in the toolkit
fresh-
episode then, but you
fresh
have
blood.
talked about it.
Yes, I
You
have.
have talked about it.
Now
Anyway,
let's
take
go
it
back
out.
to the-
Oh, we got to amplify you, Mark.
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
Kyle just made a comment, said, yeah, typical, there's strippers after the show.
That's in the green room.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
A very exclusive green room.
Man, oh man.
Okay.
The
It's
connectors aren't giving it away.
not a kilowatt amplifier.
It is not a
So
kilowatt.
It's got a
amplifier.
radio.
Well,
Still
anything's a
strange.
kilowatt amplifier just for short instances of time.
Or an attenuator.
Yeah, like the voltage
yeah.
regulator on this thing.
Just teasing
Almost
the
broke
folks
my
on the live
finger on
stream
it.
now.
So,
Yeah.
Rod, I've got a question about your little nippers there. So, is that the kind that you stick the wire in the front and you pull the trigger
Yep.
and it kind of strips it off, right?
Like
When
this.
I've seen some like not that one, but one like that, it always
yellow
leaves
one?
a big nick in the wire.
Right,
Does
yeah.
that nick the wire at all?
This has a really nice depth control on it. And if that's not enough,
But wait,
If-
there's
Wait,
more.
there's
oh,
more.
wait, there's more. If you have 28 gauge, let's see if I can do this.
What is that?
Oh,
Where'd you-
stand by. I
Hold
gotta
on.
ambigonate you.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. This
Where
is
did we
the
get that, Rod?
Nimix. This is on my link. I even
This
give you
is
the
the
YouTube one.
WS
Which,
plus
By the way,
003.
all of the links that I put on Amazon.com will also work. Just change the com to a CA. The exact same link will work.
So I can't go to Canadian Tire in the morning?
Not for Nipex, but you know that Wera, I think it's Wera or Weha, one of the two, is now over at Canadian Tire, right? So
I didn't
those
know that.
lovely pliers are now there. It was a real shocker. But anyways, this does a great little job. It basically
What? I
pull
don't know what
out.
that is. What is that?
You stick wire.
Oh,
Sorry, I have to cover
Gotcha.
my eyes or the camera doesn't focus.
gotcha.
It's focusing on the reflective surface.
So basically, you put it in there, adjusted that, it cuts down, and you can pull it straight out.
Gotcha.
So,
How
and
much
then
is
you
that?
can set the depth. I don't know. Click on the link.
So
I don't
Thomas
remember.
wants to know: will that thing strip Teflon?
I bet it will. I bet it like as sharp as can be. It's really nice. But anyways, I was really impressed, and it's tiny for the tiny toolkit, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
no
yeah.
kidding.
Okay,
So,
I gotta go to the
um,
show notes.
yeah.
I need more screens.
Go to the show
So,
notes.
so by the way,
the
for
show
those of you
notes.
still watching, this is what happens. We're talking about something serious, and Mike's watching a hockey game.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
it's genetic. What do you expect?
Yep.
To
Yep.
be
But they're
Indeed.
playing.
And so
but
here's your useless trivia of the night.
Hold on. But they're playing San Jose, and San Jose's losing 4-1.
Oh no way! Where are they
See?
playing?
That's why I was watching
There you
in
go.
San Jose.
Oh.
Just to mock us.
Yep.
So here is your
How
useless
far?
trivia of the
How
night.
far are you from the arena?
About 8 miles.
Okay, go ahead.
Vince?
Sports puck,
Vince.
not sports ball.
So Nipper was the name of the RCA dog from
Oh, yeah.
the
Correct.
RCA Victrola logo.
Yes.
Yep.
Nipper.
We have a Victrola.
I had to look that up. I wasn't quite sure.
So I want to address a question that William Strand asked about the Pete Giuliano's Simple 7 SSB transceiver. Is there a particular comment you're looking for? I mean, it looks like a neat design, but I've only read up on it briefly. I haven't tried making it or anything. He was asking us if we had a comment about that.
Is that like the All American 5?
Well, it's a Pete was trying to design a simple sideband receiver, and he realized that with some additional relay switching, like the bulk, the real heart of a sideband radio is amplifier, crystal filter, amplifier, and like that. That block in the middle can be used bidirectionally for transmit and for receive, but you've got to be able to get the signal to go through it in opposite directions. And the way they handle that in the BitX and the micro BitX and all that is they have what are called bidirectional amplifiers, and that's what the BIT that's where the BI and BitX comes from.
Really?
Bidirectional termination insensitive amplifiers. So what it is that you've got an amplifier that goes that way and an amplifier that goes that way, and you energize one or the other. And so you've got like a transmit plus 12 and a receive plus 12. And the amplifiers are high enough impedance that they kind of look transparent when they're not energized. And Pete's method of doing it was that rather than literally sending the signal through the circuit backwards, he takes that one section that's really kind of at the heart of the radio and flips it around and uses relays to change the input to the output and the output to the input and all that fun stuff. So, I mean, the way he has it designed, it's a challenge to build, but that's because he's doing it all with Manhattan style construction and whatnot. And that's just the way they like to construct things. I've never done anything Manhattan style like that. The way I would do it is I would take it and I would design a circuit board, have it fabbed, bring it back, and put components on it. That's the way I would do it. But
You
then again, I'm also
whippersnapper.
not a tinkerer.
Well, if you're
Not at the
if
RF
you're
level,
building the
anyway.
circuit and you're tinkering with changing discrete component values and stuff like that, that technique could be very helpful because you may be, like especially that Manhattan style, because it's easy to solder, desolder, solder, desolder.
Yeah.
Where if you do it with a circuit board, then you eventually screw up the traces because they can't take the.
Not only that, you can't change the architecture. With the Manhattan style,
Yeah,
you can change
right.
the architecture to whatever you want. So
Yeah, yeah. It's good for leaded components. It's really hard for chips.
yeah. So anyway, yeah, it does look like a neat design. But I've literally told you everything I know about it at this point.
All right, very good. Well, is there anything else in the chat zone here before we call it a wrap?
Not that I've seen.
Negatory, good buddy.
So Rod, Mark HES has been the recipient of many of my shack cleaning episodes, and he's actually in your neck of the woods. So I give him something, and it's either on the air or up in the air. I don't know, Mark. I gave him a 6-meter beam, and I think he had it on up on a step ladder in his driveway within 2 hours of getting home.
Right on.
Do we lose
Lost
George?
George.
So if you're looking for that, one of
He'll
those
come
type
back.
of people to contribute and pass down. It's also a great audio guy, Mark. He works in the field.
Oh, okay. Yeah, send me something. va3on@crrl.ca, and we'll.
It's an old domain.
Yes, I grabbed it.
You grabbed it. So I've been video switching with vMix if you want a Windows software mixer.
I have to look that audio software for Mac, Rogue Amoeba,
Yeah, Rogue
a
Amoeba.
bit more closely, and decide whether I want to make an investment in software or make an investment in hardware into my hardware mixing platform.
Yeah, the product is called Loopback, so the
Yeah.
developer is Rogue Amoeba.
Yeah, indeed.
And it works beautifully.
For $100, I would hope it works beautifully. The price kind of caught me off guard, but there's like a package deal that seems to be slightly better value. I'll have to evaluate that a bit more, but that was frustrating trying to get a noise gate looped in through this thing in virtual audio cables.
I got to get moving because I've had long several days with
Sitting on your backside.
450 miles of driving and late night smoking pork shoulders and various other things. So
Nice.
I'll end the broadcast now to those 38 people that are still watching. Thanks for coming out. We had a blast.
y'all rock.
And we'll see you next time. But take care.
Lloyd,
Thanks, everybody.
It's not going. I haven't made any progress. Talk to me on Twitter if you have any suggestions on how to do that, about linking the Brandmeister Talk group to the All-Star node.